He was beaten by bullies every day. Because of that, he started studying, believing that if he made a lot of money, this whole fat and disgusting. But in the end, he was still a fat otaku. And to make things worse, also stupid. After finishing school, the only opportunity he got was to become a sparring partner. That was only because the requirement was to weigh more than 100 kilos. And because of that, in the end, he kept getting beaten anyway. Then, out of nowhere, the manager named Mei Ring told him to do this month's report. He tried to say that it wasn't his job, but after some warm encouragement in the form of punches, he had no. The problem was that a lot of other people had done the same thing. Knowing what would happen, he couldn't refuse. And because of that, he spent the whole night crying while doing the reports. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest. At that moment, he remembered a doctor's warning that he would die if he didn't lose. He had his arm trying to call an ambulance. Then, a message on his phone informed him that his service had been suspended for non-payment. With nothing he could do, the young man simply accepted that he was going to die right there. Before he passed, he decided he needed to change and couldn't go on like this anymore. After that, he moved the mouse cursor to delete his study materials folder. Once he finished, he laid his head on the desk, finally at peace with himself. His last wish was not to be a fat, disgusting otaku in his next life. However, his finger slipped and accidentally clicked "Send to all" just before a new message appeared. To his surprise, Mei Rengsing seemed impressed to see that Xiao Wu's report was already finished. Meanwhile, the contents of the study folder were being revealed. At that moment, the entire office team reacted in shock to the content that appeared on the conference room screen. Suddenly, his eyes shot wide open. 20,000 years passed on the Kyushu continent. Then, a young woman was holding his arm while calling his name. With that, Tushan Xiaoyu reminded him of their promise to explore the world together, outside the mountain. Next, he remarked that he had trained there for 20,000 years without even noticing the time pass. Finally, the young man claimed to be just an ordinary person who would only cause trouble if he went down the mountain. Xiaoyu, however, couldn't understand how an ordinary person could lift a mountain. At that moment, he confirmed to himself that he had truly been reincarnated. His new life was that of a young master of a demonic sect. For this reason, he hid himself away to train, since the sect was in decline and couldn't protect him. The girl just smiled, thinking about how his company saved her from boredom. The lessons from his past life motivated him to train rigorously for 2 decades of millennia. After all that time, however, he finally realized something as he walked beside her. Suddenly, a giant serpent appeared before them. Despite this, he still saw himself as a genuine Woolingen, but one without spiritual roots. As the creature lunged forward, he thought that aside from his physical strength, he had nothing else. In an instant, he readied a punch with a clenched fist. The blow struck the serpent's body head-on, releasing a massive shockwave. Immediately after, the force tore through the creature and cleared a path through the forest. Small debris rained down from the sky as he observed the result. With that, the young man suggested they eat snake meat, and the young woman eagerly agreed. His companion looked at him with admiration, impressed that he had defeated a golden core-level dragon. Suddenly a voice. In that instant, a man on a floating sword accused them of stealing the dragon he had been hunting. Instructor Xiao Chuanhua, from the Xuan Tian Academy, declared that they were members of the. The young man stared back at him. His expression unchanged. He then denied the accusation, wondering how the man had found them. Without a second thought, he bowed down on the ground and began to apologize. The instructor observed the pair, noticing it was just a fox demon and an ordinary person without. Thus, he decided there was no longer any need to waste words on them. Next, he lunged with his sword, using the second style of his technique. As soon as the weapon was launched in his direction, Wu Lingen caught it in midair. Then while bowing, he apologized for catching the sword, which left Xiaoyu confused about the situation. His adversary refused to believe it, as an ordinary person could never stop his flying sword. Because of this, he turned to the girl and accused her of helping the young man from behind the scenes. After a moment of hesitation, his expression changed. The man then decided they would both die for their arrogance and attacked with two swords. Once again, Wu Lingen caught the blades in midair, astonishing his opponent. Then he bowed again, asking the instructor to kill him, but to not harm Xiaoyu. The instructor then summoned dozens of swords and launched them toward the girl. Without hesitation, the young man placed himself in front of her as the weapons approached. With swift movements, he moved between the blades to intercept them all. In the end, he was holding all the swords and apologized for catching them out of instinct. The adversary stood frozen, not knowing how to react to the situation. Then his posture changed, and he apologized, calling the young man senior and claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Next, he asked for his swords back so he could leave immediately. A blast of fire shot towards the forest, causing a large explosion in the distance. Wu Lingen then agreed to return the weapons, unable to refuse the request. With that, the instructor looked down at his own body, noticing the damage he had sustained. The young man just turned and said they needed to go back to cook for his father and the others. As they started to walk away, Xiaoyu turned back to the man to speak about what happened. With a dark aura, she threatened him, telling him not to dare mention this to anyone. The terrified instructor agreed repeatedly to her command. Soon after, the young man called for her to leave, and she ran to catch up with him. Alone, the man watched the two of them walk away, carrying the giant serpent. As soon as they were out of sight, he fell to his knees wondering who those people were. His expression changed, thinking that their happiness wouldn't last long. He then laughed to himself, planning to tell the Academy's old ancestor what happened so the demonic cultivators would pay. So, Xiaoyu noted that even though he could defeat cultivators, Lingen insisted on. But he denied being a match for a cultivator, while the girl claimed the man was clearly trying to kill him. Because he lacked spiritual roots, the young man explained that he trained his body even harder. When she walked, she noticed he didn't need to train like that all the time. Still, the young woman found it adorable how her companion seemed unaware of his. Soon, the landscape changed, revealing mountains in the distance. Next, the young man carried the pieces of meat to a cave entrance and announced he was going in. However, a sign at the entrance warned of a demonic presence and unforgivable crimes. Inside, a large bowl was placed over a fire. Suddenly, an imposing man emerged from the shadows, threatening death to anyone who dared invade the demonic. However, unfazed, Wu Lingen simply announced with a smile that he had brought snake meat. Right after, the group's expression changed completely as they welcomed the young visitor. From behind bars, everyone begged for the meat, saying it smelled great and that they were starving. Then, the young man explained that despite their appearance, these were uncles who cared for him. Even so, the group's leader just turned his face away, dissatisfied. At that moment, Wu Di, the sex chief, asked if the young man still considered him a father, but his son explained that hunting and preparing the food had delayed him, though his father retorted that he knew what was happening outside. Next, the elder accused the girl of trying to convince him to go down the mountain again. The leader's response was a shout, absolutely refusing the request. Even after being sealed for 20 millennia, Wu Di stated he still remembered the cunning of the righteous people. With that, he asked if the young man wanted his own father to bury him, causing the boy to apologize. However, he hesitated for a moment before continuing. Soon after, the patriarch exploded, saying he'd been hearing the same excuses for 20,000 years. His son's attitude left the man completely speechless. Still, Lingen declared that he no longer wanted to stay in the forest, even if it meant being hunted or killed. Then, the other members called him naive, reminding him he was the last of his family and that leaving would be suicide. At that moment, Shoyu interrupted the argument to say they had encountered a righteous. She revealed that her companion defeated him with a single punch, though he tried to say it was just a misunderstanding. Hearing that, Wu Di silently wondered if the young man had really grown so strong, but he still shouted that he was. He then asked how his son would face stronger cultivators, which made the girl worry. With that, his father warned him not to think himself invincible, just for defeating A. But the young man replied that he never claimed to be invincible and wasn't interested in that. His real goal, he revealed, was to break the seal to rescue them, something he couldn't do in the forest. Then Wu Di turned to the others and asked if they had told his son, but they all denied it. The young man remembered how his father, even while sealed, had always worried about. Now that he was grown, he declared it was his turn to protect the elder. At that moment, Shoyu interrupted the conversation to remind them of something they had forgotten. She explained that since he had no demonic aura, her companion's identity wouldn't be discovered. And the others agreed. Still, Wu Di refused to accept the risk, as any advancement would release his aura and kill him. The son turned to leave, asking not to be blamed for a decision he had already made. As soon as he turned his back, he heard his father yell for him to stop. Immediately after, an object was thrown in his direction. He caught it in midair, while Shoyu also looked at the item. Confused, the young man asked what the object in his hands was. The elder explained it was the qualification for the Xuan Ti in Academy exam. Immediately, the group got excited about the news, since the academy was famous for training in. Then, Shoyu questioned the decision. With that, the young man understood he would find countless cultivation paths there, and could find one for himself. Next, he started packing his belongings into a large bundle. Soon, he emerged ready to leave with huge luggage, announcing he was heading to Xuan Ti Academy. Curious, the young woman asked how the father got the item, but he refused to answer. Then, Wu Di admitted he could no longer protect his son. Therefore, sending him to the academy was the best way to keep him alive. While the young man consulted a map, in secret, the patriarch spoke to the girl about the. He then asked her, a nine-tailed fox of near emperor level, to protect him. Shoyu raised her hand, confirming she understood the seriousness of the matter. She then asked who would bring them food after she and the young man left. In the background, the entire group froze as they realized the situation. Finally, Wu Di shouted for everyone to eat. Since that would be their last good meal, Jugyu then said goodbye and told him to enjoy the moment. As soon as she turned, he shouted for her to wait, but the girl quickly warned that she wouldn't bring any more food. Then, with a serious expression, the father reminded her that the world was on the brink of collapse. Immediately after, he warned her that the hidden power in Lingen needed to awaken, because time was running out. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the imposing entrance of Xuan Ti Academy. There, one of the instructors was organizing the line, telling everyone to see the people to stay in order. The candidates were also instructed to prepare their tokens for the entrance exam. With his luggage, young Wu Lingen observed The instructor explained that the tokens had to be inserted into the mouth of a stone lion to detect spies. Right after, he called the first person in line to step forward. The candidate placed the item in the statue, which glowed and validated his entry. With the approval, the young man thanked him and entered the academy. Next, the instructor called for the next candidate in line. In the background, the next participant panicked, wondering if his token was fake and if he would be detected. Suddenly, a scream caught everyone's attention in the line. The examiner announced that a demonic cultivator had been found, as the statue clamped down on A. One of the onlookers explained that the stone lion doesn't let go when it detects an anomaly, frightening the observer. The captured man begged for mercy, but the instructor ordered the guards to take him away. The person in charge of the exam and another candidate pointed at the young man, telling him it was his turn. Then, the instructor called him suspicious because of his backpack and ordered him to insert the token. Muttering the instructions to himself, he approached the stone statue with a trembling hand. Suddenly, the other candidates felt a tremor run through the courtyard floor. He then placed his hand inside the stone lion's mouth. The instructor confirmed the admission ticket was in order as the statue began to glow. Just after a sigh of relief, the creature's eyes lit up and a red energy started to. In an instant, the statue clamped its mouth down hard on his arm. The stone lion's head broke loose from its base and remained clamped onto his arm. Then, the rest of the statue's body shattered, much to the instructor's surprise. He stood there, confused about what had just happened. The lion's head still attached to his arm. Awkwardly, the young man apologized and tried to fix the mess by gathering the broken pieces from the ground. The instructor then accused him of being a demonic cultivator and ordered his. As the guards restrained him, he tried to argue that his admission ticket was valid. The instructor explained that the lion automatically attacks when it senses. Only then did the young man realize he had been contaminated by a demonic aura from being around the others. Suddenly, Xiaoyu's voice echoed through the courtyard, ordering everyone to stop. As she appeared, the fox questioned the cultivator's careless actions while everyone wondered who she was. The instructor then asked why a member of a monster clan was meddling in the academy's affairs. At that, the young woman held Lingon's arm and introduced herself as his guardian. The revelation surprised the other candidates, who commented that the boy must have an important background. Next, Xiaoyu suggested the instructor check the origin of the admission ticket. Looking at the item on the ground, the man recognized it as belonging to the legendary. He then explained that the sect was destroyed 20,000 years ago and that Lingon was its sole successor. One of the candidates questioned how the most powerful sect in the world could have been destroyed. Right after, he explained that the sect's name was literally that. With that, Xiaoyu argued that it was understandable for the ticket to be tainted with demonic energy. The instructor reflected that the situation was delicate and needed to be handled with care. Even so, he warned the two of them not to do anything suspicious and to behave. Then, Xiaoyu told the boy not to be so tense as they walked, so no one would get suspicious. She advised him to act normally, and he repeated her suggestion. The scene then opened to show the architecture of the Xuan Tian Academy. Soon, a crowd of new students was gathering in front of a welcoming tower. From above, the academy instructor Mei Yanli watched everyone in silence. Next, Master Huang Luhong approached to ask about this year's new students. The instructor commented that there were a good number of promising students in the courtyard. Seeing them were Bai Di from Yujian Peak and the young Master Tizhan Kao from the Heiwan sect. Without wasting any time, the young man invited the girl to practice dual cultivation with him, but with a serious. Around them, others commented that the girl was a super genius. The daughter of the Yujian Peak master. Even so, Bai Di concluded that her father was right. From above, Instructor Mei commented on the quality of the students, but hesitated for a moment. He felt that something strange had mixed in with the group, as Wu Lingyan tried to act normally. Master Huang laughed, thinking he was just someone trying to show off his newfound strength. Instructor Mei, however, doubted that with such flashy behavior, he would pass the first test. Right after, one of the assistants came running out in a hurry. From the top of the tower, the instructor floated in the air and got everyone's. Then, Mei Yanli introduced himself as the one in charge of the evaluation, and announced the start of the test. He explained that only those who passed all stages would become disciples of the academy. As he watched, Yang Lingyan felt that the instructor's face seemed familiar. At that, the man questioned him directly, asking why he was staring at him like that. Not knowing what to say, the boy just hesitated for a moment. Then he pointed to a loose, shiny thread hanging from the instructor's clothes. Faced with the observation, the instructor remained silent in the air for a moment. Suddenly, he descended rapidly towards the group of students. With a frightening face, he congratulated the rookie and said he was eagerly awaiting his results. Instructor Mei, now frozen in place, tried to start speaking. He then scolded someone else for not stopping at the designated spot. Baidi watched the scene, not understanding why the instructor couldn't fly and how the rookie had the nerve. Master Huang commented that the boy was in deep trouble for offending that man. In an instant, the instructor freed himself from the line that was holding him. He then explained that it was just to lighten the mood and announced the start of the first phase of the test. Yu Lingyan wondered if the instructor was crazy and if it was really necessary to rip. Two other students noticed the man's strong muscles and intimidating aura. Soon, one of them identified him as the legendary wielder of the sacred. This ability prevented active cultivation and the use of spells. Instead, the body absorbed attacks and captured spiritual energy. This made the user immune to all attacks from opponents of the same level. The scene left him shocked, wondering if only masochists could become cultivators. Then the instructor announced that each of them had to hit him with a punch so he could evaluate their. The man thought that by controlling the test, he would ensure the boy's failure. Next, he pointed at Wu Lingyan and ordered him to go first. But the boy simply warned him to get ready because he was quite strong. The instructor laughed, saying that not even a nascent soul-level cultivator. However, just as he continued to boast about his own resilience, he was interrupted. A punch landed squarely on his face before he could finish his sentence. The shockwave passed through the instructor and destroyed part of the academy in the background. All the other candidates watched the scene, completely paralyzed and speechless. Meanwhile, Master Huang watched from the window, sweating and unable to believe what he was seeing. He had his eyes to the enormous crater the punch had created, carving a path through the mountains. His face pale, he realized it was all over for him. Amid the rubble, the instructor sat on the ground, smoke rising from his body. With his eyes rolled back in foam at his mouth, the man looked completely unconscious. Not understanding the gravity of the situation, the young man turned to the others and asked if this meant he had passed. In response, the other candidates simply backed away in silence. In the rooftops, a fox leaped nimbly, sitting down. Xiaoyu watched the scene, noticing how Lingyan. In the crowd, one of the students wondered how the examiner was affected, since theory suggested otherwise. At that, Bai Di turned to the newcomer and asked how he had managed such a feat. Meanwhile, Master Huang approached the instructor lying on the ground. He quickly assessed that the punch's force was nearly at the level of a late-stage nascent soul. Finally, the man's eyes shot open. In an instant, he got up from the ground. He then ran towards the young man with a strange expression. As soon as he reached him, he accused him of a sneak attack to the face while the young man apologized. Then, one of the candidates concluded that the sacred body hadn't resisted because it was caught by surprise. The examiner warned that the previous test didn't count and that he would be disqualified if he used tricks again. Next, a golden aura enveloped his body, activating the ability. One of the students recognized the technique as the ultimate defensive move of the sacred body. The instructor then boasted that even with full force, the kid wouldn't be able to move him. Without hesitation, the young man landed a solid punch right in his stomach. The fist sank into the man's body, who didn't move an inch. The crowd commented, impressed, that the examiner hadn't even moved his legs from the impact. Master Huang, however, noticed something was wrong with that reaction. Moments later, it was revealed that Instructor Mei had passed out standing up. Master Huang then intervened, announcing that everyone had passed the first round. The candidates celebrated the news, wondering about the young man's strength level. Next, a student approached to introduce himself to Wu Lingyan. He revealed himself as Zhong Ma, successor to the Hahuan sect, and listed. With that, he decided to accept him as his brother, making the young man uncomfortable with the idea. In an instant, the other candidates also approached, asking to be his younger brothers. Soon after, a boy introduced himself as Tianji, from the Tianji sect. With an apology, he admitted that despite collecting data, he had nothing on his brother. Finally, the young man felt a sense of familiarity with his friendly attitude. Then, Tianji asked which sect or school he was from. Awkwardly, Wu Lingyan replied that he was just a lone cultivator. Suddenly, the crowd parted to make way for the genius from Yujian Peak. With that, the young woman accused him of liking the attention and promised to show him the difference between them. Right after, the girl turned and walked away as he watched her. In the background, a hooded figure watched the scene from amidst the crowd. Master Huang then shouted for no one to celebrate too soon. He then pressed a red button on a remote he was holding. The ground beneath the candidates' feet lit up, and everyone wondered what was happening. Amidst a tremor, the group found themselves transported to a dark enclosed space. From the outside, the structure was revealed to be a giant metal cube. Inside the cube, several robotic creatures and mechanized knights appeared before them. As soon as they were transported, the candidates found themselves surrounded by warriors in giant armor. From above, the scene revealed just how small they were compared to the machines surrounding them. With a smile, Huang Luhong introduced himself as the master of the Jikyo Pavilion and the examiner for. He then explained that all the puppet mechanisms in the room were created by his pavilion. The test consisted of dodging hidden weapons that would be continuously launched at them. He then lit an incense stick and announced that the challenge would last until the flame went out. Tianji then began to warn that the weapons fired by the puppet mechanisms were dangerous. In an instant, the machine's eyes lit up, confirming they were real. With that, the robots began to fire energy blasts toward the candidates. The students ran desperately to dodge the attacks, which exploded all over the floor. The machines continued to fire without stopping. Many were hit by the explosions and gave up on the test almost immediately. From a distance, Huan Luhong observed that the young man from the Hahuan sect was doing well. Zhang Ma activated his technique and stood motionless as the beams of light went around him. With a smile, he bragged that no one could hit him from behind with that skill. Moments later, a beam of light hit him square in the chest. The examiner just covered his face, pretending he hadn't jinxed it. He then noticed that the girl from the Hahuan sect was also proving to be surprisingly strong. Suddenly, the cultivator's expression changed as she noticed something. Meanwhile, Wu Lingyan buried one of the robots in the ground. He quickly concluded that he wouldn't get hit that way. The examiner then shouted furious that the test was about speed and not to be misinterpreted. The examiner threatened to disqualify him if he broke any more puppets, but he just apologized. With that, young Bai Di recalled her father's advice. Suddenly, Instructor Mei grabbed the device, saying there was no need to waste words. He then pressed the buttons himself, determined to make the boy feel the puppet's power. The robot parts began to detach and gather in the center of the room. In an instant, they all merged into a single giant robot, surprising the lone. Tianji then explained that the fusion strength surpassed the golden core level and questioned the test's difficulty. He also warned that the puppet's weapons were coated in a deadly poison. With arrows in his back, the young man just said he felt dizzy, while the other scolded him. The examiner argued that it could kill someone, but Instructor Mei didn't care. With a smile, he asked if they really wanted that arrogant kid to pass the test. The giant puppet then fired a barrage of poison needles from its hands. In a swift move, Wu Lingyan easily dodged all the projectiles. After dodging, he stopped and looked back, as if he had noticed something. Playing again, he saw that the other candidates had been hit by the attacks and apologized. Annoyed, Instructor Mei decided to send even more puppets after him using the controller. In an instant, the young man found himself completely surrounded by the giant robots. With an aura of energy forming around him, he prepared for the confrontation. From a distance, the instructors warned him he would be disqualified if he damaged another puppet. Lying on the ground, Tianji promised to burn incense for him. While the others noticed the danger had subsided. The girl from the Yuji insect just watched, thinking this was what he got for showing off. Even surrounded, the young man stood still, facing the robots. With that, he decided this was the only way to resolve the situation. He then bent his knees and gathered strength in his legs. In a powerful leap, he flew toward the giant puppet and struck it with a crushing blow. The instructor stared in shock, unable to believe he could fly as the puppet was destroyed. The other students wondered what his level was, since flying with swords required the golden core stage. Lying on the ground, Tianji explained that he wasn't using spiritual aura to fly. In fact, he was just using the strength of his own legs to jump. The other candidates watched, disbelieving the strength of his body, as Tianji. Instructor Mei, however, knew he couldn't stay in the air for long and prepared to attack. Then several spears were aimed at the exact spot where he would land, unable to destroy the puppet's end. The young man needed to find a solution. During the cultivator by D dodging the attacks, he seemed to have found the. With that, he landed precisely on the tips of the spears on the ground. In an instant, the young man stood right in front of the girl, immediately after. He knelt before her, with a smile. He questioned what she would do next. The sudden approach left her speechless, wondering if this was the pervert her father had. In a quick move, the young man hid behind her as the swordswoman defended herself. He continued to use her body as a shield against the attacks. Annoyed, the cultivator shouted for him to stop, but he just apologized, saying it was the only way out. Without hesitation, the young woman tried to strike him with her blade. With that, she decided she would take him down first, before anything else. Attacked by projectiles and his partner at the same time, the young man cried out for help, realizing. Lying on the ground, Tianji gave a thumbs up, impressed by Lingyan's ability to dodge the blows. From a distance, Instructor Mei laughed as he controlled the attacks, wondering. With that, the cultivator looked at the instructors, and noticed the incense stick was almost burnt out. In an instant, an idea came to him as he observed the examiner. He then stopped running and turned to face by D, as arrows flew towards him. He then filled his lungs with a deep breath. The instructors watched the scene, not understanding if he was preparing to die. As he blew, a massive gust of wind created a vortex that pushed everyone back. The force of the blast dragged the other candidates across the arena floor. Even so, Instructor May held the controller tightly, believing it was all. The wind was so strong, it even made their hair stand on end. The examiner warned him not to think he would pass the test, but the young man asked him to hold on for a moment. With that, he pointed out that the test's incense stick had already completely burned out. Proctor Huang realized the gust had sped up the burning, and wondered what was up with that boy's body. TNG then shouted that Chief Lingen actually had a deeper purpose for his actions. With that, the gust tore the clothes of several candidates. As he explained that the chief was trying to get benefits for everyone, the swordswoman's face turned completely red. Immediately after, the disciple from the Eugene sect ran off, warning that this wasn't over. While the young man wondered what he had done wrong, he then looked at the other participants who were injured and bleeding. A voice in the background commented that it had been many years since they had seen such an interesting freshman. Suddenly, the dean of Chuan Tian Academy, Yu Tianxing, appeared, praising the vibrant and lively. So the students wondered if that was the dean, commenting that he didn't look very trustworthy with his. Then, TNG scolded them, revealing that he was the legendary Red. He then told the story of how the dean had massacred countless demonic cultivators and dyed his hair with their blood. And so, the other candidates didn't seem very impressed by the story. One of them then asked why his red hair was fake if the legend was true. The dean turned to the young man and asked for his name, and he replied that it was Wu Lingen. From a rooftop, Jia Yu watched the scene, worried. The young woman wondered why the dean had appeared so suddenly, and how she could fix the fact that Lingen had offended him. With that, she contacted him mentally, and the young man heard her call. She then instructed him to put the dean's wig back on before he noticed. Master May tried to apologize on the boy's behalf, asking his superior for magnanimity. The dean, however, retorted, questioning the instructor's own lack of skill. Meanwhile, the wig continued to slip from the master's head. In an instant, the young man prepared to act. With a swift movement, he leaped up and placed the wig back on the dean's head. The elder was impressed by the speed of the movement, which was almost imperceptible. With a smile, the cultivator said he had just picked up something the dean had dropped. Master May tried to get Dean Yu's attention to warn him. From the roof, Zhao Yu screamed in despair, telling him to tell the difference between. Instructor May grabbed him by the neck, accusing the boy of attacking the elder, but he apologized, saying. The dean, however, asked if they really thought such small things could hurt him. Instructor May pointed to the dripping blood, but his superior insisted it was part of the test. He claimed impressed, but Zhao Yu realized the dean was just putting on a brave face. Then, the young man offered to remove the weapon stuck in his head. As soon as the dart was pulled out, a black liquid gushed from the wound. The dean then collapsed to the ground, revealing his hairy legs. Instructor May rushed over and caught him before he hit the ground. The other students commented that he seemed like just an arrogant old man who wore hairy leg prosthetics. Examiner Huang then announced that all remaining candidates had passed the second phase, and that the next test would be the following day. While the instructors carried the dean to the alchemy hall, the others just watched the scene. One of the candidates remarked that, although they had passed the evaluation, something felt strange. Suddenly, one of them remembered something important, as he found himself surrounded by the puppets. They all shouted at once, asking Master Huan why he hadn't deactivated the mechanical puppets. From a distance, instructor may watch the chaos in the courtyard, while Lingen remains safe. Instructor Xiao Chuanhua thought that he hadn't expected the boy to just hand himself over like that. Later, the students lamented, saying they were almost shot to death during the test. Thus, the scene shifted to the student dormitories at night. There, Xiaoyu found him training and asked why he wasn't resting. But the young man said he needed to pass the test. She then agreed that the next assessment was crucial for obtaining more training resources. Still, the young woman reminded him that balancing work and rest was also important. With that, she offered to help him unblock his meridians, but her expression made him suspicious. The girl just praised him for being ambitious and moved closer. In a swift move, the cultivator caught her and told her to be careful. To herself, Xiaoyu celebrated that her plan had worked perfectly. Outside, Baidi stood still near a wall. Suddenly a noise startled her. Soon she turned toward the sound, which was coming from his room. Through the window, the girl saw Wu Ling in silhouette and wondered what he was doing in there. So, she tried to convince herself it was a mistake, since the boy had just arrived at the academy. With that, she decided to calm down to get a clearer view of the scene. Looking again, the silhouette in the window seemed to confirm her suspicions. In reality, he was just training with his jump rope, which his uncles had luckily found. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu lamented spilling the red flower wine used to treat injuries. He then bent down with a cloth to start cleaning the puddle on the floor. As she stepped on the liquid, the young woman slipped and suddenly fell. Outside, Baidi prepared to break into the room, determined to save the girl. Suddenly, a frightening silhouette appeared in the window, making her scream in terror. Soon, she covered her face, believing it was too late to do anything. Inside the room, the cultivator asked if Xiaoyu was okay, but she just said she had fallen. With that, she lamented that her clothes were stained with the red liquid. He then offered to help her find clean clothes and turned to the closet. Suddenly, the bedroom door was kicked open. At that moment, the scene showed the young man handing a towel to Xiaoyu, who was kneeling on the floor. Upon entering, the girl accused him of desecrating the body, while the other wondered how she had become a corpse. The young man couldn't understand why he was being called a murderous demon. He then wondered if she had discovered his identity, but he dismissed the thought immediately. Despite his attempt to explain, Baidi refused to listen and prepared to attack. Soon, she activated her sword technique and an energy aura formed around her. The young woman then initiated her 10,000 swords attack. With no other choice, he decided he would have to offend her to defend himself. With that, he moved at high speed, dodging the energy blades. The speed of the movement surprised him for a moment. She then prepared her celestial sword piercing strike, a massive energy beam shot toward him. To defend himself, he countered the attack with a direct punch. His opponent couldn't believe he had shattered her key sword with just his body. Suddenly, she felt a presence appear right behind her. In an instant, she was hit on the back of the neck with a hand strike to erase her memory. With that, she fell to the floor completely unconscious, her sword rolling to the side. Sitting on the floor, the cultivator apologized. The technique consisted of infusing power into the palm of his hand and directing it to the opponent's brain. As a result, the blow left her completely stunned on the floor. Soon after, he said they needed to get her back quickly before anyone found them there. Then, the young man carried her on his shoulders out of the room. Under the moonlight, he ran across the academy's rooftops with the girl. As he moved, he looked for the right place where he should have left her. Suddenly, the swordswoman began to wake up, wondering what was wrong with her. At the moment, he struck her again with the same memory-erasing blow. Still, something continued to worry him. As he carried her through the academy streets, he wondered where this woman lived. The situation left him completely lost, not knowing what to do next. Hidden Tianji watched the scene, trying to understand the relationship between Lingen and Baidi. Although he pushed the door to one of the rooms, he soon opened it completely. After that, the young man laid her down on the bed. But suddenly, the young woman began to wake up, wondering what was happening. However, without hesitating, he struck her again with the blow to erase her memory. As she fainted, the stranger apologized for not being able to reveal his identity. He then began to worry if the repeated use of the technique might have scrambled her. He knew it was better than having his family exterminated. Looking around, he was surprised by how messy the girl's room was. He then noticed the footprints he had left on the floor. So, determined not to leave any traces, he grabbed a mop to clean the area. Plus, while he was cleaning, he decided he might as well tidy up her room. But then, the scene shifted to a gazebo in the middle of a forest at night. At that moment, a hooded figure ordered whoever was there to stop hiding. Then, as the young Xiaochunhuo emerged, the stranger praised him for finding him so well hidden. He then boasted, saying that nothing escaped his eyes. With that, the young man explained that he needed his help to deal with a new student. The hooded man, however, questioned why he should help him. In return, the instructor promised his full support in the selection of the next family head. Soon after, the figure stood up and asked for the target's identity. The request was answered with the revelation that it was Wu Lingen. Upon hearing the name, the man remembered the arrogant boy from the test. The instructor then proposed rigging the selection so he could kill the boy accidentally. The hooded figure agreed to the plan, but reminded him not to forget his promise. Just as the figure turned to leave, young Master Xiaochun called him back. Shortly after, he asked for help with one more problem. In the water, a giant aquatic serpent was coiled around his leg, trapping him. Desperate, he begged to be saved first, which left his ally incredulous at the situation. With no other choice, the man decided to intervene. With a swift move, he drew his weapon and slashed the creature with a blast of energy. He then ran and leaped, finishing the attack with a powerful cut. With the creature defeated, the hooded figure announced that it was all over, but suddenly, Xia Kunyuo fell from. In an instant, the man caught him in his arms before he hit the ground. The instructor praised the strength of the Xia family's genius, but the young man just told him to get off. With that, the figure dropped him headfirst into the water and walked away. Soon after, the spirit of Master Dan appeared, and the hooded man warned him that Wu Lingen was not so simple. The master agreed, admitting that the power the young man demonstrated would be a challenge even for him and his prime. Still, the man boasted, claiming that no one in this world could defeat him. He then revealed that he was a time traveler named Xiuhua. In his original life, he was just an ordinary student on Blue Star. After a traffic accident, he ended up transmigrating to the world of cultivation. He then became a seemingly insignificant young master of the Shao families. One day, while tending to the cattle, he tripped and fell into dung. It was at that moment he found the ring that housed Master Dan, starting his journey to power. With a protagonist backstory like that, he felt confident that all his opponents were. Furthermore, Wu claimed that even with no hard feelings, it was Wu Lingan's destiny to be defeated by him. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the young man suddenly sneezed, not understanding why. After finishing his cleaning, he decided the room was tidy and it was time to leave. With that, he opened the wooden door. After saying his farewell, he left. While Bai Di continued to sleep, standing in front of his own room, the traveler noticed something was off. As soon as he entered, he realized someone had been there. For a moment, he just watched the sleeping girl. But in an instant, he panicked. Using a female cultivator had invaded his room. The young woman's fame as a goddess of the new generation comes to his mind and he finds. Then, the young man scolds himself, telling himself this is no time for distractions. With a renewed focus, he turns toward a piece of furniture in the room. He starts to analyze the situation, wondering why a girl would be tidying his room or, only one conclusion comes to mind. She must like him. The memory of comics from his past life makes him believe that as a protagonist, it's his destiny to. As he looks at the sleeping girl, he wonders if Bai Di could be his destined heroine. Shortly after, his expression changes when he notices that despite everything, the girl still hasn't woken up. At that moment, Master Dan appears and reveals that her consciousness is damaged, which is why she can't wake up. Xiaohua then assumes Bai Di used so much energy cleaning his room that she passed out, earning. Unfazed, the young man leans over the bed, confident he can help using first aid knowledge from his past life. He then positions himself in front of the bed and prepares to begin the procedure. Just then, the girl on the bed lets out a soft murmur, slowly, her eyes open, and she wonders what's. At the same time, the young master leans over the girl, his lips ready for a kiss. Suddenly, a loud crash makes Wu Lingyan look back, startled by the noise coming from the room. Right after, Bai Di kicks the door open on her way out and warns him to never. Sitting on the floor, Xiaohua asks why she attacked him if she has feelings for him, prompting Master Dan to. The young man concludes that the women in this world are naturally reserved and that a kiss was too direct. Master Dan then asks how he can be so sure Bai Di likes him and didn't just enter the wrong room by mistake. The bruised face, the protagonist replies that the reason is simple. Outside, the young woman walks alone through the courtyard, trying to understand how she ended up in someone else's bed. A memory then surfaces, showing the moment she confronted Wu Lingyan and heard the accusation that he was a. Slowly, the memory becomes clearer. And she finally starts to understand what happened. In her memory, she accuses Wu Lingyan of being a cultivator who uses bodies to strengthen his. Therefore, Bai Di realizes she's discovered a huge secret and that the person in the room was likely. With a determined smile, she swears she'll find proof that a thief has infiltrated the Xuantian Academy. At that moment, her voice echoes through the night, screaming Wu Lingyan's name like a promise of revenge. The shout wakes up two female students who recognize Bai Di's voice and wonder what could have happened between. The next day, on the presentation stage, all the students had already gathered for the. As they waited, some began to complain that the evaluation hadn't started yet and that. Far away, Wu Lingyan continued his intense training, determined to push himself even harder. When Tushan Xiaoyu tried to calm him down about the test, he replied that he couldn't. In the middle of the crowd, Bai Di watched the scene and criticized Wu Lingyan for still showing off. Other students noticed her reaction. Something that Bai Di had shouted Wu Lingyan's name the night before and wondered what happened. With a smile, Tianji approached and hinted that none of them knew the real story behind the incident. Shortly after, he began to explain that the relationship between the two was deeper, preparing to tell what he saw last night. Before he could continue, a blade was pressed against his neck, cutting the gossip short. Right after, Xiaowu appeared from behind and threatened him not to slander Bai Di. At the warning given, he walked away, leaving Tianji on the ground. The crowd commented on his sudden reaction, assuming he was just a huge fan of Bai Di. Ignoring the comments, Xiaowu reinforced to himself that she was his destined heroine, while, suddenly, an authoritative shout demanding silence echoed throughout the presentation area. With the arrival of Mei Ring-sing, all the students, including Wulingen, turned towards the stage. Next, instructors Mei Yanli, Yu Tianqing, and Huang Luhong went on stage. And the third evaluation was announced. Mei Yanli explained that this round would be a real combat test. Their performance would determine which class each student would be assigned to. After that, she announced that Dean Yu Tianqing would personally evaluate the entire process. Next to Wulingen, Tushan Xiaowu commented that the dean seemed to have changed his wig, but was. The dean seemed to notice the whisper, but just confirmed that he understood the instructions. Then, one of the instructors pressed a button and announced that the third round would be a combat test. With that, the students formed a line in front of a penguin-shaped machine to get their numbers. Wulingen watched the others approach as he waited for his turn in line. When his turn came, he put his hand inside the machine's opening to draw a number. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Mei Yanli took the chance to throw a piece of metal with paper attached. Not understanding what had just happened, he looked at his hand. In his palm, the paper with the number 38 was torn and attached to a sharp piece of metal. From a distance, Mei Yanli watches the scene with a satisfied smile. Shortly after, he turns to Xiaowu and confirms he made the target pick the rigged number. The instructor boasts about his skill but is interrupted by a bloody cough. Then, Xiaowu shows his own number, 36, and asks if the plan went wrong since he's not. With an air of superiority, the hooded figure claims he didn't understand the real strategy. Mei Yanli explains that Wulingen seems to have some cultivation technique, so he preferred to have someone else test his skills first. Just then, the young man notices a large shadow approaching and turns to face his opponent. A giant man with the number 37 appears before him and advises him to give up, calling him and the crowd, Tianji and other students. Soon, Tianji reveals that the opponent is Wang Tiaju, a famous assassin known for never leaving witnesses. Standing before Wulingen, the man reveals he watched his 2 previous assessments. With disdain, he calls him trash who relies only on a bit of natural strength. Wang Tiaju then boasts about being at the peak of qi refinement and slaps the boy's face, invoking Tushan Xiao. Seeing his reaction, Wang Tiaju taunts him, asking if he wants to start the fight right there. Amidst the tension, the crowd stirs, waiting for the newcomer to finally react to the provocation. To everyone's surprise, he just apologizes, stating that his spiritual root is very poor, as Tushan Xiaoyu scolds him for being so polite to an opponent, but he simply replies. Then, Wang Tiaju approaches and orders him to kneel if he wants his life spared. Wulingen stares at him in silence for a moment before speaking. At that moment, he states that even though he is weak, he has reasons that force him to keep fighting. The assassin then warns him to prepare for defeat in the arena and turns to leave. As he walks away, Tushan Xiaoyu praises Wulingen's attitude, who looks at her confused. Far away, Wang Tiaju reminds Mianli of their deal to get into the upper class if he kills the boy. With a smile, the assassin walks away, promising to make the newcomer understand his true power. Mianli simply comments that he hopes Wulingen isn't eliminated in the first round. Soon after, Mianli announces the end of the drawing and summons the freshmen for the first to be announced is number 1 by D to the crowd's delight. Next, number 2, Zhang Ma enters the arena and proposes dual cultivation, angering the crowd. Everyone threw objects. A moment later, he was hit squarely on the head, completely breaking his stance. The food was deflected, but ended up hitting instructor Mei Rinxing, who was covered in it while Zhang. From a distance, Xiaohua and Mianli just watched the chaos unfold in the arena. With a serious look, the hooded young man stated he would remember Zhang Ma's name for coveting the woman who was his. Mianli asked how he got close to her so quickly, to which the mysterious youth replied it was the effect of his protagonist's aura. To end the mess, Dean Yushinking coughed and ordered the match to begin immediately. So the instructor let go of Zhang Ma, who was still covered in the remnants of the crowd's food. Standing on the other side of the arena, Baidi simply commented that this was exactly what she wanted. Therefore, Zhang Ma declared he would show his true skills to finally win her over. Then, he prepared to execute one of his most powerful techniques. Using Shadow Clone, he created multiple copies of himself which spread across the arena. Tianji explained that the technique created clones with fast movements, but Wu Lingyan didn't seem impressed. Surrounding his opponent, the clones taunted her, saying she would never win if she couldn't find the real body. Baidi just watched in silence for a moment, and suddenly all the clones vanished, leaving only Zhang. With a swift move, the young woman lands a direct kick on her opponent, who asks if she thinks he's an idiot. At that moment, he writhes in pain and accuses her of using a despicable and low blow. With a smile, the young man begins to reveal that not everything is as it seems. Soon after, Zhang Ma reveals a metal protective plate, explaining that because he had harassed others, he was. Seeing that his kindness was refused, he decides he will no longer be merciful, and begins to gather. As the energy sphere is launched toward Baidi, he has to dodge the swift attacks from her clones. In the audience, Wu Lingyan asks why he didn't just launch the chi sphere. To this, Tianji explains that a cultivator's level determines the distance and power of their chi, and that just. Hearing the explanation, Lingyan reflects on how strong his father and Tushan Xiaoyu truly are. In the arena, Baidi manages to dodge all the blows and asks if that's all he has to show. With a wave of his hand, Zhang Ma declares that this farce must end. Warning her not to underestimate him, he prepares to redirect the attack against her. He quickly jumps back to get some distance. Finally, he claims his skill surpasses her imagination and launches the attack directly. With her agility, she manages to dodge his attack. The cultivator regains her composure and begins to evade the spheres with swift movements. The instructors comment on the Heihuan sect's unique ability to manipulate spiritual. One of the students explains to Wu Lingyan that the technique uses energy threads to control larger attacks, which, back in the arena, Baidi faces the approaching energy sphere with a determined look. Then, she draws her sword, irritated at being forced to use it against such a despicable opponent. With a single motion, she declares it a disgrace and slices the energy sphere in half. The impact of the slash shoots forward in a straight line, hitting her adversary head-on. Suddenly, Zhang Ma's protective metal plate shatters, leaving him completely shocked. Shortly after, he falls to his knees, impressed that she destroyed his attack and even more convinced she's the. With the impact, the young man faints and collapses onto the arena floor, defeated. Wu Lingyan watches the scene, confused about how the energy was being controlled. Instructor Mei Rinxing then announces that Zhang Ma has lost the ability to fight and. While the crowd celebrates the victory for Yuji and Peak, the swordswoman remains standing in the center of the arena. Next to Tushan Xiaoyu, the young man wonders if this is what battles between cultivators are like. Suddenly, a girl appears, holding a giant chicken leg. The pink-haired girl then recognizes Baidi, expressing her admiration for the #1 cultivator of the. Soon after, she comments that she'd also like to be that strong one day. The newcomer approaches Wu Lingyan, who is surprised by her height. She accidentally bumps into Tushan Xiaoyu, who is shocked by the impact. In that instant, the fox assumes this is the kind of thing that pleases Lingyan. The pink-haired girl notices the young man's gaze and deduces that he's craving a bite. Seeing everyone's reaction, she offers him the meat and asks if he isn't craving something else. Even while scolding himself, Wu Lingyan admits he's hungry from training and accepts the chicken leg. Tushin Xiaoyu panics, not knowing what to do when she realizes he actually. She can't believe a stranger understood Lingyan's desires better than she did. Meanwhile, the instructor orders Zhang Ma to be removed from the arena so the next contestants can prepare. With his mouth full, Wu Lingyan asks the name of the girl who fed him. With a smile, she introduces herself as Nurang Chan, a student who joined the academy last year. Tushin Xiaoyu questions her about being a senior, but the young woman replies that's not quite. Soon after, Nurang Chan explains that she's actually repeating the year due to low grades and came to take the. While eating, she reveals she could be expelled if her results are poor, making Wu Lingyan notice she doesn't seem that nervous. Shortly after, Tianji approaches to share a piece of information they might not know. He reveals that Senior Murang comes from a famous family of alchemists, revered throughout all 9 provinces. Consequently, he says she developed a technique that turns out chemical ingredients into food without. Hearing that, Wu Lingyan realizes the meat he just ate was actually a spirit pill. At that moment, he feels ashamed for having consumed something so valuable, but Nurang Chan reassures him. She explains that she simply can't stand to see someone go hungry. Moved, he calls her an angel, while the fox beside him grumbles that it's not that big of a deal. Suddenly a crowd of admirers runs past them, clearing a path for the young prodigy. At that moment, Baidi approaches with a focused gaze, ignoring the commotion around her. Without hesitation, Nurang Chan goes up to her and, with admiration, asks for an autograph. While she waits anxiously, Baidi just stares at her coldly, leaving Wu Lingyan and his guardian in silence. The number 1 refuses the request, but advises him to be careful when choosing his friends. She then turns to Wu Lingyan and promises she will find out the truth about what he did the previous night. As she walks away, the crowd begins to speculate if what Tianji said about their relationship was true. Because of this, Nurang Chan asks if he's really close to Baidi, but the young man replies that he. Ignoring his answer, she grabs his hand and asks him to introduce them, as she wants to become as strong as the senior. Suddenly, Instructor Mei Ring Sing's voice echoes, calling Nurang Chan's name twice. From the stage, he scolds her for not hearing the call and tells her to hurry up for her match. As she runs, the girl asks Wu Lingyan not to forget her message, and he. With that, Tushan Xiaoyu advises him to stay away from her, but he replies that he thinks she's a good person. He reflects that someone who cares so much about a stranger can't be a bad person. On the stage, the instructor reminds her that this is her last chance to retake the exam. The girl then takes a deep breath to prepare for combat. With a determined look, she tells herself that she needs to win at least one fight to be able to stay. Then, the thought of having to return to a dark place terrifies her. The instructor then announces the next fight and calls for number 36 to come to the stage. In response to the call, a hooded figure begins to walk toward the presentation stage. Nurang Chan watches her opponent approach, and her expression shifts to one of complete surprise. Lowering the hood, Xiao Huahuo reveals his face with a smile and announces that he has arrived. With both sides in position, the instructor prepares to start the match. Meanwhile, the two opponents face each other with serious expressions, ready for combat. In the upper seats, Yu Tianxing and Huang Luhong wonder how the young lady from the Nurang family ended up in. Soon, the stern-toned young man explains that she failed almost every evaluation, even the alchemy test, and, with that, they both conclude that if the senior student doesn't win a single match, they might have to send her back to her family. Then, TNG remarks to Wu Lingyan that despite preparing powerful medicinal foods, at the center of the arena, the instructor gets into position again to give the signal. Then, with a leap backward, he announces that the match has begun. With her fists clenched, the Murang heiress tells herself that she absolutely cannot lose. Her opponent, on the other hand, comments that he didn't expect to fight such a cute girl. Soon after, the young man imagines he'll win easily with his vast experience. Even more confident, he fantasizes that after the fight, both she and Bai Di will be impressed by. At that moment, the girl charges forward with a cry and throws a straight punch. Her fist lands squarely on the young man's face, catching him by surprise. The impact sends him flying backward as his opponent gives him no respite and launches another attack. Then, Wu Lingyan asks why that idiot is just standing there smiling. While Tushan Xiaoyu suggests he must be thinking about something happy. Inside his mind, Master Dan scolds him for daydreaming. But the fighter assures him he'll win because he's the protagonist. Back in the fight, the senior Murang charges and throws another straight punch at her rival's face. At the last second, he manages to catch her fist, stopping the attack. With the blow blocked, the young man warns that the same move won't work on him a second time. Right after, he throws her over his shoulder, sending her to the other side of the arena. The girl lands hard on the ground, while her opponent starts to get up for his next move. Still, with her guard up, she prepares to charge again. With that, the young man uses his speed, claiming that ordinary hand-to-hand combat will never hit him. In the crowd, Wu Lingyan shouts words of encouragement for the senior, much to Tushan Xiaoyu's displeasure. Panting, the young woman seems to be running out of energy to continue the fight. Even so, refusing to lose, she pulls out two huge meat legs, determined not to give up. To her rival's surprise, the girl starts devouring the food right there in the middle of the arena. Then, Tianji explains that the fighter is using spiritual food to increase her combat power, making Wu. Soon, he reveals that the food is actually pills, and that eating so much at once can have serious. Suddenly, the accumulated energy explodes in an intense light that blinds the young man for a moment. Next, the Murang heiress appears with her clothes torn, but enveloped in an aura of power. In the audience, Wu Lingyan and Tushan Xiaoyu wonder if what they saw was her body exploding or just her clothes. With a bloody nose, the young man lets out a mocking laugh. With that, he claims that even with a last-ditch effort, the senior won't be able to beat him, but he's told to wipe his nose first. Ignoring the comment, the girl replies that she has to try, even if it seems impossible. With a shout, she charges at her opponent, even cracking the arena floor. The attack rushes toward the fighter, who braces for impact. His master Dan warns him that her strength has surpassed the chi refinement stage. Then the fighter warns that the fight isn't over yet, and prepares to attack again. With that, the young man declares that he's going to start fighting seriously too. Her fist then crashes against the sword he uses to defend himself. The force of the impact startles him, leaving him in shock for a moment. Then, the punch shatters his defense and hits him squarely. Wu Lingyan is impressed by the senior's power, but Tushan Xiaoyu notices that she's just pushing her. Right after the observer explains that at that level of intensity, the young woman won't be able to last for more. In the middle of the destroyed arena, the heiress breathes with difficulty, already exhausted from the fight, with sweat. She wonders aloud if she managed to win. On the observation platform, the instructor asks if the young man was. But Dean Yu Tianqing reassures him. Amidst the smoke, the silhouette of a sword appears, and the opponent is surprised to have been pushed to his limit by a local girl. With a wounded face, he gets up and decides it's time to show his true strength. With his sword on his shoulder, the young man declares it's time to show his true strength. Then, his face bruised, he warns that this time, he won't hold back. With that, he rushes forward, promising not to go easy on his opponent. As the fighter leaps into the air, Wu Lingyan shouts for her to look up, making her react and attack from above then. Just in time, the girl manages to leap back and dodge the blow. With a blue energy flower in his hand, her rival claims she won't be able to escape. He then unleashes the blue Heartfire Lotus technique directly at the young woman. The energy erupts in blue flames, engulfing the combatant and destroying part of the arena. In the crowd, Wu Lingyan and Tushan Xiaoyu watch the scene, silent and motionless. Amidst the flames, the girl screams as her clothes are burned away by the energy. At this, Tushan Xiaoyu covers Wu Lingyan's eyes so he can't see, as the audience reacts to the strike. The instructors recognize the blue lotus flame and conclude that the match seems to be decided. Standing in the smoke, the young man faces his opponent and asks what's wrong. With a smirk, the fighter asks if she isn't going to surrender yet, but she just glares back with determination. Without a word, the heiress pulls out a bottle and starts chugging its contents. A fiery aura explodes around her, and the bottle shatters on the ground. The unexpected reaction leaves the young man completely shocked. Then, the combatant charges forward with a cry, releasing a wave of energy that kicks up debris. The young woman unleashes a flurry of rapid punches against his sword, and he. Watching the scene, one of the instructors wonders if the girl has gone mad. Wu Lingyan then asks if her aura intensified because of a level up, but Tushan Xiaoyu denies. The fox explains that the senior is pushing her limits with even more pills. Tushan Xiaoyu concludes that, at this moment, the young woman is literally burning her own life force. Even while injured, the fighter continues her assault, repeatedly screaming that she can't lose. Seeing his opponent's stubbornness, the young man warns that he won't hold back any longer. With a new move, he traps her inside a giant blue lotus, which explodes and sends her flying. As soon as he lands, the fighter prepares to end the match. During the danger, instructor Mei Ring Sing shouts for the match to be stopped immediately. Ignoring the warning, the young man unleashes his blue lotus whirlwind attack on the heiress. The instructor screams for them to stop the match, yelling that it's already over. With a panicked look, Mei Ring Sing realizes it's too late to intervene. Lying on the ground, the girl wonders if this is really the end for her. Then a memory surfaces, showing a relative destroying her food and scolding her for dishonor. In her memory, the young woman asks why the Morong family can't break free from the shackles of alchemy, since her food has the. However, the only answer she gets is a slap, as she's told that cooking is a disgrace to the family name. With that, her relatives decide to send her to the Zhuanshan Academy, planning to arrange a marriage for her if she fails. Then, one of her family members throws her out, calling her useless and a shame to the clan. The memory ends with the girl on the ground, crying as she clenches her fists, with a determined look. She vows to prove that the food she makes is just as good as any pill, back in the present, as the energy. The combatant wonders if anything can truly change. At the last second, the energy attack is stopped just before it hits her. Suddenly, Wu Lingyan appears in front of the girl, blocking the final blow. With a serious look, he faces his rival and says that he can't hurt her, because Senior Morong is. When asked if he's trying to stop him, he confirms he will if his opponent intends to hurt the girl. As smirk, the fighter calls him brave for daring to challenge him. Suddenly, instructor Mei Ring Sing jumps between the two and orders everyone off the arena, declaring the. The referee then points to the injured young man and declares him the winner of the match. With a twirl of his weapon, the young man prepares to leave the arena. Or he won't get the chance to face him personally. Not understanding the threat, Wu Lingyan replies that he'll do his best to get past the first round. Tushan Xiaoyu scolds him for being so calm in the face of a clear threat, but he doesn't understand what happened. Just then, the heiress starts to cough, still weak from the fight. As Wu Lingen supports her and asks if she's okay, the young woman thanks him for saving her. With a sad expression, she laments that she couldn't win a single round, even after giving it her all. Then, the girl starts to cry out of frustration. Suddenly, she vomits. And a startled Wu Lingen tells Tushan Xiaoyu to quickly get some healing pills. While holding her in his arms, he tries to calm her down. But the fighter insists she's fine. She then explains that she just ate too much, prompting Tushan Xiaoyu to complain about how disgusting the scene is. Wu Lingen kindly offers to help the veteran Moron get down to rest, and she thanks him. Before they can leave, instructor Mei Ring Sing stops them and asks where the boy thinks he's going. He then informs him that it's now his turn to fight in the arena. The evaluator then reveals that his opponent is Wang Tieju, who stares at him with a disdainful smile. Wu Lingen asks Tushan Xiaoyu to escort the heiress off the stage, and the young woman wishes him good luck. While supporting her, the fox complains in her thoughts about having to take care of this foolish woman. Immediately, Mei Rengsin orders both sides to prepare for combat. In the arena, Wu Lingen faces his adversary, who waits for him on the other side. In a mocking tone, Wang Tieju claims it seems he's given up his last chance to survive. In response, the young man just stares at him in silence, showing no reaction. With the leap, the instructor moves away and officially announces the start of the match. Slamming the ground, his rival declares that if that's how it is, he'll have to kill him. In the audience, everyone worries about the fighter's power, but Tushan Xiaoyu reassures them, stating, with total confidence, she declares that no attack will be able to take him down. In the arena, Wang Tieju just watches his enemy, ready for the final attack. Without understanding his opponent's stance, Wu Lingen wonders what kind of move that is. Suddenly, Wang Tieju shouts and unleashes a dark aura that rips his clothes from top to bottom. Then, an intense light explodes in front of Wu Lingen, who watches the scene in silence. With that, his adversary appears wearing pink underwear and performs his iron pillar dance. The visual shock gives the young man an instant nosebleed. Disgusted, TNG explains that the move is so nauseating that people can't even stand. Instructor Huang Luhong comments that using such a visually aggressive move is a disgrace to the academy. The dean, Yu Tianqing, corrects him, stating that the visual effect is just a distraction. He then asks him if he hasn't noticed that something is wrong with everyone in the audience. Kneeling with a hand on his stomach, Wu Lingen feels nauseous and can barely stay upright. Seizing the opportunity, Wang Tieju leaps with his weapon and yells for him to die. The pillar hits the ground hard, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris, even weakened. Wu Lingen manages to jump away and dodge the attack. With a growl, Wang Tieju prepares to attack again, giving him no chance to escape. With a spinning motion, the rival performs his whirlwind iron pillar dance around Wu Lingen. In the audience, the spectators can't take it anymore, covering their eyes and vomiting from nausea. Next to Tushan Xiaoyu, the heiress suddenly seems to understand what's happening. He then explains that the disgusting display is just a distraction for the real trick, the toxic. With a victorious smile, Wang Tieju boasts that the entire arena is now covered in his poisonous smoke. Feeling the effects of the poison, the young man covers his mouth, trying to resist. Meanwhile, Tushan Xiaoyu accuses him of being despicable for secretly using poison. In response, the assassin states that on a stage of life and death, all means are fair. From a distance, Mayan Li watches with satisfaction, praising the hired fighter's performance. Beside him, Xiaoyu comments that he almost fell for the trick, but the instructor corrects him saying. Soon after, Wang Tieju charges forward with a cry, ordering his opponent to die in agony. However, paralyzed by the poison, the young man wonders what's happening, as his body won't move and gradually, his expression shifts to panic, as he realizes the gravity of the situation. Seeing his rivals, he then approaches for the final blow, promising to end the suffering quickly. With that, the pillar is swung straight into the young man's face, forcing him back with injuries as his enemy watches with. He begins the frenzied iron pillar dance, landing a sequence of brutal blows. The barrage of attacks hits his body relentlessly, and the young man just endures the impacts. In the audience, Nurengkan shouts for him to stop fighting, while TNG worries about the impending defeat. Desperate, the fox begs the instructors to stop the match immediately. However, Mei Rengxing replies that he can't stop the fight, as the boy still has the ability to fight back. Despite this, the sequence of blows continues to hit his body without mercy. From afar, Bai Di watches and questions if this is all the strength he has, disappointed by what she sees. With his opponent already weakened, Wang Tiju prepares for the final attack. A moment later, the pillar strikes its target dead on, splattering blood across the arena. The scene leaves everyone in the audience shocked, and even the assassin himself is surprised by the outcome. Still, the young man manages to catch the iron pillar with his hands, stopping. Not understanding. His enemy questions why he is still resisting with the little strength he has left. Wounded, the young man explains that because he has little energy, he needs to put everything he has into. With a scornful smile, the rival asks if he really believes such a weak punch. In that same instant, the fist hits the side of Wang Tiju's body. Immediately, his expression changes to shock as he feels the impact suddenly. A wave of energy explodes from within his body, and he screams as he takes the damage. The force of the punch spreads across the arena in rings of energy, expanding from the point of impact. Explosion is so powerful it can be seen from the audience, leaving all the spectators speechless. His body wounded. Finally, with a last breath, the assassin falls to the arena floor, completely defeated. Wu Lingyan simply declares that he has won the fight. Fallen on the ground, Wang Tiju mutters that defeat is impossible. He then questions how his opponent managed to beat him so easily, even while poisoned. Wu Lingyan simply turns away without giving a direct answer. Then, with a serious look, the young man reveals that was the power he possessed even when weakened. Not understanding, the defeated man calls him a monster, shocked by the revelation. Soon after, instructor Mei Rengxing announces that the winner of the round is Wu Lingyan. With a subtle smile, the young man celebrates his victory. Next, the instructors decide to disperse the poison mist left in the arena. With that, Huang Luhong launches a device that flies over the battlefield. The artifact releases an antidote that falls like rain, healing everyone affected by the poison. Feeling the rain, Wu Lingyan realizes his strength has been restored. At that moment, Nurang Chan runs towards him and congratulates him on his victory. With a hug, she praises him for being even more powerful than she imagined. The scene awakens the fury of Tushan Xiaoyu, who advances towards them with a threatening glare. As the young man is being hugged, the fox girl gets closer and closer, ready to intervene. With a shout, Tushan Xiaoyu places herself between them and warns Nurang Chan not to get so close to Lingyan. The girl tries to justify herself, but the fox girl accuses her of being. From a distance, Xiaoyu complains that he should be the one surrounded by beautiful girls, and Mei Yanli asks him why he thinks that. Soon, the instructor admits that the winner's strength truly exceeded his expectations. Then Mei Yanli asks Xiaoyu if he's sure he can handle that opponent. With an aura of confidence, the young man replies that the word lose doesn't exist in his dictionary. At that moment, Xiaoyu Xuanhua appears from behind and finds him 500 spirit stones for. Annoyed, the young man questions him about the penalty, but Mei Yanli holds him back so he won't be impulsive. In a whisper, he warns that the man is in charge of discipline at the academy and is also the dean's uncle. Xiaoyu Xuanhua just watches the scene with a serious and intimidating expression. With that, Mei Yanli points out that the dean is watching the commotion from a distance. Reluctantly, Xiaoyu Shuahu agrees to pay the fine and hands over a bag of spirit stones. Immediately, he receives another punishment, this time for 1,000 stones, for malicious. While Mei Yanli tries to calm him down, the young man yells in anger but ends up agreeing to pay. As soon as the two walk away, he kneels on the ground and swears he'll make the dean and that old man pay double. Falling to the ground with accumulated rage, Xiaoyu Shuahuo cast one last look towards Wulingen, as if. Suddenly, Wulingen shivered, feeling a cold chill run down his spine. He quietly commented that the air had turned strange, leaving Tushan Xiaoyu intrigued. Soon, Tianji congratulated him on his victory against a 5-star assassin. But Wulingen replied seriously that the fight hadn't been as simple as it looked. With a sly smile, the informant revealed that the battle had yielded valuable information on Wang Tiyuzu, which, at that moment, instructor Mei Ring Sing called out to Tianji, reminding him that he still had to participate in the first round. Surprised, the boy realized it was his turn to fight. With firm and cautious steps, he climbed into the arena to face his opponent. On the other side, Yujiakshui, a young man with red hair and a calm gaze, waited in silence. In the upper seats, Dinyu Tianqing confirmed to Huang Luhong that the young man was, in fact, his. He then explained that because he refused to learn the family's techniques, he had no choice but to send him to the academy. In the audience, the revelation caused a stir among the students, who. While Wulingen's group showed concern, Tianji remained calm and declared that his boss was. With his book in hand, he stated that even without great combat skill, intelligence could make up for the. Facing Yujiakshui, he revealed that he already had a lot of information on him since he was the. Confidently, he declared that by using the secret techniques of the Tianji sect, he would never go down. As soon as the instructor announced the start of the match, the two stared at each other intensely. Soon, Tianji activated his divine technique and a celestial eye opened on his forehead. Tushan Xiaoyu explained that it was a secret skill of the Tianji sect, mastered by few, capable of. Observing Tianji's stance, she commented that he had really been saving an ace for this moment. Meanwhile, Yujiakshui prepared himself, curious to see the power of that technique. Concentrating, Tianji initiated the Tianji deduction. The technique revealed an 85% chance that Yujiakshui would open the fight with an earth attack. Immediately after, Yujiakshui used the earth and rock thrust, forcing Tianji to quickly jump. From a distance, Yujiakshui watched as the boy balanced himself on one of the rocks. With a confident smile, Tianji stated that he had already calculated that attack and therefore wouldn't be hit. Impressed by his precision, Wulingen commented on the boy's movements. And Tushan Xiaoyu confirmed it was the effect of the technique. He explained that the celestial eye allowed Tianji to access the divine thoughts of the Tianji ancestor as if he. In that same instant, a powerful aura appeared behind him, revealing the imposing image of an. As the young warrior prepared to attack, a red aura began to envelop her hands. With that, Tianji's technique revealed a 90% chance of an earth-based attack. Next, the girl charged forward at high speed, using the shining trail technique to close in on her opponent. Without panicking, the young man simply raised his hand to the exact position his. As the enemy's fist drew near, he managed to block the attack with precision. Despite the block, the full force of the impact struck him squarely in the face. The blow sent the young visionary flying backward, and he fell unconscious on the arena floor. As his opponent watched, the young man lay on the ground completely defeated. From the audience, Wulingen and Tushan Xiaoyu shouted the student's name, stunned by the outcome. Though injured, the boy was already back on his feet, jotting in his notebook about needing to calculate the difference in strength next time. Right after finishing his notes, he collapsed again, leaving Wulingen even more. Just then, instructor Mei Ring Sing congratulated the young master on his victory, while Wulingen. In the upper seats, the dean commented on the fighter's progress, but lamented that he still refused. After the fight, the winner glanced at the instructors in the sky and then turned to leave the arena. At that, instructor Mei Ring Sing permitted him to step down from the stage. Soon after, Wu Lingyan was carrying his colleague on his back, praising him for his strength and his third eye technique. With a swollen face, the young man replied that he didn't need to learn it, but Wu Lingyan lamented his. At that moment, instructor Mei Ring Sing announced that the second round would be randomly arranged and from the upper seats, the dean and instructor Huang Lu Hong questioned the decision to select opponents randomly. Elsewhere, Xiaowo worried he wouldn't get to face Wu Lingyan, but Mei Yanli. With a smile, the instructor revealed that Wu Lingyan had offended more people than just the two of them. Immediately after, Mei Ring Sing crumpled a piece of paper in his hand and announced that the first match was set. In front of the drawing machine, he unfolded the papers to reveal the competitors' names. And so, the fight would be between Wu Lingyan and Xiaowo, who smiled confidently. However, Tushan Xiaoyu and Marang Chan questioned how this was possible, if the selection was random. But Wu Lingyan claimed he hadn't heard anything about it. The instructor immediately defended himself, asking how they could possibly rig the results to target. Right after, Xiaowo spoke up, saying he believed instructor Mei wouldn't show favoritism to anyone. Seeing her rival's hesitation, Tushan Xiaoyu accused him of being arrogant and afraid to fight. With a serious look, Wu Lingyan cut her off, stating that was enough talk. He then declared that to get into a better class, he couldn't back down one bit. While Marang Chan and Tushan Xiaoyu admired their companion's serious demeanor, the visionary took the. With both opponents in position, the arena fell silent, awaiting the start of the match. With a smirk, Xiaowo remarked that he didn't expect his rival to actually have the guts to come up and fight. Then, the young man lunged forward to settle old and new grudges at once, striking the. Immediately, Tushan Xiaoyu complained about the surprise attack, but instructor Mei Ring Sing pretended he had already announced the. Annoyed, the fox concluded that everyone at the academy seemed to be targeting her brother. In the arena, the two fighters exchanged a flurry of high-speed blows. With a swift move, the aggressor created an afterimage to confuse his opponent. Just as a spectator shouted a warning, Wu Lingyan was already turning to face the attack coming from behind. He then threw a quick punch, and Xiaowo acknowledged that the boy's speed was indeed impressive. Immediately after, a massive explosion of blue energy erupted across the arena. Without backing down, the challenger used his own arm to block the advancing blue flames. With that, his opponent claimed to have already figured out his fighting style and, feeling the heat from the energy, Wu Lingyan blew on his own hand to cool it down. Suddenly, the young man's expression changed as he realized something important. With a shout, Xiaowo invoked the 3000 Fire Dragons technique, unleashing two enormous creatures of blue flame. The intense heat from the flames forced his opponent to retreat, realizing he couldn't block the attack. From a distance, Myanli watched with satisfaction, encouraging the attack to corner the adversary. Meanwhile, Baidi watched the fight, hoping Wu Lingyan would finally reveal his demonic techniques. Trapped at the edge of the arena, he saw his enemy prepare a new attack to finish him off for good. Right after, the twin dragons entering the sea technique charged toward Wu Lingyan, who braced for the imminent impact. With a shout, Wu Lingyan declared he had no choice but to use his full strength. Meanwhile, Marang Chan and Tenji watched with excitement, eager to see what move. With his hands in position, the young man prepared to execute one of his immortal techniques. Then, he shouted, "Chest press exercise," releasing a wave of energy that repelled the blue flames. Xiaowo protested that it was nowhere near an immortal technique, while the challenger boasted that he had developed it from his workout experience. With that, his opponent admitted he had some skill but warned that his tricks weren't over yet. After the dragon energy dispersed, exploding into small flames around the young fighter. In an instant, the flames transformed into dozens of small fire lotus flowers. With the arena covered in flames, Xiaowo dared him to catch them with his bare hands. Faced with the new threat, Wu Lingyan decided he needed to use an even stronger, immortal technique. Right after, he executed the side-to-side jump immortal technique. At that moment, Zhang Ma, watching from afar, wondered if he had learned his technique. With swift movements, the young man created multiple images of himself that moved around the arena. Annoyed, Xiaowo realized his rival was using the airflow from his movements. With his opponent surrounded by elemental fire energy, he prepared for a final attack. Thus, Xiaowo summoned the fire rock confinement prison surrounding the challenger with flames and rocks. Meanwhile, Tianji and Murang Chan questioned how he could use earth techniques. The informant noted the absence of elemental fluctuations. A moment later, Mei Yanli bragged about Xiaowo's 5-element exchange technique, causing the young man to complain that the opponent reflected on how the natives of this world didn't understand the principles of the 5 elements. In the upper seats, Dean Yu Tianxing ordered Huang Luhong to record the boy's technique. However, the instructor remembered the high cost of spiritual rock crystals. Back in the arena, Xiaowo boasted that with knowledge of the world's principles, his techniques had. With another shout, he prepared to launch his final attack. The young man then executed the rock-piercing blast, causing the walls of fire and rock. The rocks and flames then crashed down on Wu Lingen, who was trapped in the center of the explosion. Tianji and Murang Chan screamed his name, worried about the outcome of the attack. While the dean lamented the loss of his spirit stones, Huang Luhong tried to get his attention. With a meat leg in her hand, Murang Chan prepared to save Wu Lingen, refusing to stand by. However, Tushan Xiaoyu stopped her, stating that she shouldn't add to her brother's problems. With total confidence, the fox reassured her, guaranteeing that this little technique. With an air of superiority, Xiaowo claimed that a native of this world would never be a match for him. The child of destiny. Suddenly, the arena floor began to tremble and crack beneath his feet, leaving him. In the audience, everyone wondered what was going on, questioning if it was an earthquake. With a confident smile, Tushan Xiaoyu simply declared that her brother Lingen was truly invincible. Then, the floor shattered from below, revealing an intense yellow energy. Soon, Wu Lingen emerged from the rubble, performing the super speed bench press immortal technique. The scene left Xiaowo completely shocked, wondering how it was possible. At this, Tushan Xiaoyu explained that those stone slabs were nothing compared to her brother's normal training. Amidst the debris, the challenger commented that this weight was still too light for him. Annoyed, Xiao Yuhuo refused to believe that someone from this world could embarrass him. Then, the young man declared that, as the chosen one, there was no way he could lose to some random nobody. With that, he used the metal borrowing Earth's momentum technique to strengthen his weapon. Soon after, he prepared to deliver the thunder strike against his opponent. In the upper seats, the dean lamented that rage had clouded his grandson's judgment, making him forget. Back in the arena, Wu Lingen prepared to use another of his immortal techniques. As the attack descended, the young man executed the body rotation exercise. With a spinning kick, he struck the enemy's weapon head-on, shattering it to pieces. The impact of the blow was reflected in Xiaowo's eyes as he watched his weapon get destroyed. With his rival disarmed, Wu Lingen turned and declared that he had lost. In the audience, Tushan Xiaoyu and Murong Chan celebrated his strength and victory. From a distance, Mei Yanli grew angry, questioning how his fighter could lose to a boy with no cultivation. With his victory secured, the challenger began to walk away, leaving his enemy behind. Fallen on the ground, Xiaowo screamed, refusing to accept defeat and ordering him to stay where he was. Then he stood up and asked Master Dan to lend him his strength, determined not to lose like this. Master Dan appeared and questioned the request, refusing to risk his soul for a mere admission test. Faced with this refusal, the young Xiaowo argued that coming to this world would be meaningless if he failed such a basic challenge. This reminded him of his past life as an ordinary student, ridiculed for reading. In his memories, he wondered why he was the butt of the joke and wished he had the power of a protagonist. Suddenly, the memory of a warning shout pulled him from his thoughts. Even after the image of a desperate driver appeared as a truck sped toward him. In that instant, he recalled the moment he realized he'd been transported into the world of a comic book. In this new beginning, he became an outcast young master, constantly humiliated. Still, he looked at a ring on his finger, determined to no longer be treated as worthless. He soon remembered that inside the ring lived the spirit of a powerful cultivator named. With his mentor's help, he advanced rapidly in his cultivation and reached the chi refinement stage. As soon as he gained strength, he made sure everyone who had bullied him got what they deserved. His remarkable performance made him stand out among his generation and earned him his family's respect. He then revealed that his goal was to become the patriarch to prove he was no longer weak. Back in the present, he declared that since he possessed a special ability, he couldn't be defeated by Amir. The master sighed, complaining, but finally agreed to help the boy. He then used a burst of energy to transfer his accumulated chi, warning that he could only. The young man smiled, absorbing the bright energy and assuring his ally there was no need to worry. From a distance, Huan Luhong commented to Ding Yu Tianqing that the chi emanating from him seemed abnormal. The elder cultivator explained that although his strength was limited, the most important thing was his. The boy then summoned the flame of the water element. Right after, he launched a wave of explosive water at Wu Lingen. Desperate, he began to drown and struggle inside the aquatic bubble. Realizing the young man's cultivation base had skyrocketed to the golden core, Mei Yanli immediately accused the competitor of cheating, but Tushan Xiaoyu scolded him, demanding proof. The challenger then mocked his rival, claiming that even his superhuman strength would be weakened by the water. Next, he generated the metal element, smiling. He summoned the black iron shard thorns technique to pierce his opponent. However, Wu Lingen quickly used a swimming technique to dodge the rain of iron spikes. As soon as he noticed the escape, Xiao Huahua shouted that his rival wouldn't get away and summoned the wood element. Dark vines then emerged in the water and trapped Wu Lingen, immobilizing his movements. While the challenger commented on the branch's strength, the young man stated that this was the effect. Unexpectedly, he bit his own finger hard, drawing blood. At that moment, Master Dan questioned him for using his lifeblood, but the boy replied that he only had enough energy. With that, he explained the generation cycle of the 5 elements, preparing to combine all the powers. Little by little, all the energy concentrated in his hand, forming an. He then unleashed the primordial chi heavenly tyrant / attack against his trapped opponent. Immediately the audience panicked upon realizing the fight had exceeded the chi refinement level and screamed for help. At the last second, Ding Yu Tianqing leaped toward the arena to intervene. He quickly released a red energy barrier to suppress the attack's shockwave. As the barrier contained the explosion, a student remarked that enrolling here was the right decision. Behind his attack, the young man shouted that he would no longer be ignored and that he had to win at any cost. The energy beam finally struck the water prison head-on, completely engulfing Wu Lingen's silhouette. Even inside the bubble, his opponent apologized and clenched his fist tightly, shattering the vines. The boy then watched his enemy's reaction. He then prepared to use an immortal art technique called common straight punch. The blow collided directly with the energy beam, sending the challenger's robe flying back from the impact. Not understanding the force of that attack, Xiao Huahua watched the clash. Soon, a massive explosion formed at the point of collision while the young man questioned how it was possible. A few moments later, the light from the explosion completely swallowed the arena. Protected by the barrier, the students commented that the shockwave would have been fatal without the dean's help. Amidst the chaos, Yu Tianxing watched the smoke and wondered how a blow with no spiritual energy could. The dust began to settle, revealing Wu Lingen's silhouette still standing. The transmitter heard Master Dan admit that they had been defeated. Even as the master told him to stop, the boy refused to accept it, claiming that as someone from his opponent then approached, apologized, and raised 2 fingers toward him. With a swift motion, he delivered a strike with his fingers that drove his. Lying in the crater, Xiao Huohuo remained completely knocked out. Wu Lingyan then glanced at his defeated opponent and revealed that he, in fact, was also a transmigrator. From a distance, Manhwa grew annoyed, questioning the winner's true strength. With the victory made official, Wu Lingyan was hailed by the crowd as the announcer called out his name. As soon as he stepped down from the arena, Tushan Xiaoyu and Murang Chan embraced him, praising his strength and, a bit embarrassed by the attention, the young man commented that the effort of the fight had drained a lot of his energy. Murang Chan quickly reassured him, saying she had plenty of food for him to recover. Just then, she pulled a giant piece of meat from inside her clothes to offer the fighter. Tushan Xiaoyu immediately scolded her, telling her not to keep her storage pouch in such a strange place. To this, Murang Chan replied it was the place with the most room, leaving the fox girl flustered. As the young cultivator ate, the fox girl watched her rival and decided she would learn to cook so she wouldn't give her. Soon after, Manhwa interrupted the group, asking if they weren't going to step down so the next. As he walked away, the winner had a sudden idea and stopped in his tracks. He then ran back toward Xiao Huohuo, who was still lying on the ground. The young man then crouched down and offered a piece of meat to his rival, asking if he'd like some too. The defeated opponent just stared at the offered meat, not saying a single word. In a swift motion, Xiao Huohuo slapped the food away and shouted that he didn't need anyone's pity. As the loser walked away, Tushan Xiaoyu promised to teach him a lesson, but Wu Lingyan stopped her. Right after, Murang Chan questioned his generous attitude, and he explained that he held no grudge. Like this, the 2 girls looked at him, not understanding the meaning of that word. From a distance, Manhwa watched the young man walk away and mocked him for proclaiming himself heaven's chosen. He then decided he needed to think of another way to deal with Wu Lingyan. Suddenly, a punishment talisman was slapped onto his face, interrupting his thoughts. As soon as the talisman hit him, Xiao Huo appeared and fined him 100 spirit stones for spitting on the ground. The young man recognized the instructor, and with no way to react, agreed to pay the fine immediately. As he handed over the stones, he swore to himself that he would make Wu Lingyan pay for this humiliation. At that very moment, the winner sneezed unexpectedly. Murang Chan quickly offered him some ginger soup, but he refused, saying someone was probably thinking about him. A short while later, a voice called his name, making him turn to see Bai Di standing atop the arena. He recognized her the instant he saw her. Nearby, Manhwa commented that it wasn't that student's turn to fight yet. Ignoring the instructor, Bai Di addressed the young man, acknowledging his strength, but questioning. In the distance, Xiao Huohuo remarked that the girl had offended 2 people as soon as she arrived. Right after, Bai Di accused him, stating that if no one else would expose his demonic cultivation. Not understanding the accusation, Wu Lingyan asked what the young woman was talking about. He then asked Manhwa to move up her fight, and he agreed, informing her that an opponent would need to be. The instructor just smiled when the student refused the drawing. With her sword in hand, Bai Di challenged all advanced level students to come up to the arena and, in the audience, a disciple asked if she thought she was invincible, just because she had a higher cultivation level. During the scene, Xiao Huohuo commented to Master Dan that this was the woman he was interested in, but the spirit the elder then reminded his pupil that Wu Lingyan himself was also a transmigrator, advising him to stop dreaming of being. The young man, however, replied that having a rival with the same origin only confirmed his status as the. With a determined look, he promised himself he would overcome all difficulties and crush his opponents. Faced with the situation, Huohuo asked the dean if this wasn't against the rules, but Yushin King. The dean then asked Bai Di if she was sure of her decision, and the girl confirmed, saying she didn't want to waste time. With that, Yushin King declared he was eager to see the skills of the new generation of cultivators. Without further delay, Mei Yanli shouted, announcing that the battle had begun. Outraged by the challenge, several students attacked at once, warning her not to be so arrogant. Unfazed, the swordswoman called their attacks insignificant tricks and began her technique. She then summoned the dance of the 100 sentinel swords, creating a barrier of blades around her. One of the challengers shouted that he would break her defense with brute force and charged toward the circle of swords. With that, he raised his weapon and unleashed the frenzied blade of purple thunderstrike. The young woman just watched him and questioned if he really wanted to compete in a contest of strength. The attack collided with the barrier and a flash of light. Moments later, it was stopped by the cultivator with her great sword. A massive explosion followed, throwing all the students away with the shockwave. The challenger who led the attack was thrown out of the arena by the impact. Shortly after, he landed hard on the ground in front of the other spectators. In the crowd, Yuma remarked that she was indeed the greatest genius of her generation for defeat. TNG added that the swordsmanship of Yuji and Peak was truly impressive as the victor watched her fall. Soon after, TNG turned to Yuma and asked why he didn't go up to the arena since he had also been promoted. With a smile, the young master replied that he wouldn't lose to a mere subordinate, leaving TNG confused by such pride. Suddenly, Baidi noticed a movement in the dust. Soon after, one of the students who had withstood the previous attack lunged to strike her. With swift spin, the swordswoman disarmed him and flung him into the air with the force of her blade. Seizing the opportunity, the other challengers still standing decided to attack all at once. They all charged forward together, forcing her to defend herself while complaining that it was endless. Then, the cultivator formed a hand seal, declaring she would control the sword with her chi. With that, the warrior levitated on her blade in a pillar of light, as the crowd wondered if she had. At that moment, Yuma explained that this wasn't a flying technique, but a move from Eugene P. Next, rings of energy began to form around her body in mid-air. Amidst the glow, one of the defeated students yelled out, complaining that the technique was blocking their view at A. Shortly after, the challenger raised her weapon and invoked the Ascension of 10,000 Swords technique. She then unleashed a shower of energy blades that rained down on all her opponents in the arena. Next instant, all remaining challengers fell to the ground, defeated and pinned by the swords. Meanwhile, Tushan Xiaoyu admitted that the swordswoman was skilled, but still inferior to Wulingen. A moment later, one of the fallen students tried to speak, but only spat out blood. The injured student questioned why he was hit, while another suggested the young warrior did it on purpose. From a distance, a masked man watched the cultivator land in the arena. The stranger then commented to himself that she had grown even stronger. Soon, the announcer officially declared, by D, the winner of the challenge. As soon as the fight ended, the victor turned and fixed her gaze on Wulingen. Then, she challenged him, stating it was time to settle their score. Without hesitation, the young man walked toward her and asked if she didn't need to rest, but she replied it wasn't necessary. She then claimed that defeating those opponents had cost her almost no energy. Witnessing the scene, Dean Yutinshin commented to Huang Luhong that he would let the two strongest. Huang Luhong released several monitoring drones to record the battle. Next, the small robots flew over the fallen competitors in the arena. One of the drones grabbed a student by the hair to remove him, as the injured boy cried out in pain, unsure how to react. However, D cut him off, vowing to force him to use his full power and expose his identity as A. Laughing at the situation, the challenger denied the accusation, explaining he didn't even have any cultivation as he brought A. Following that, Wulingen questioned why she insisted on killing him, even. The swordswoman replied that he knew nothing of what she had been through, as she recalled a bloody scene from her past. Realizing the young woman was even more enraged, Wulingen braced himself for the imminent attack. Soon, the cultivator invoked her technique, releasing a pillar of sword energy that shot up to the heavens. Faced with this, he felt the power of the spiritual chi and concluded he couldn't take the hit head-on. Thus, using an immortal art, the challenger leaped into the air the exact moment. The force of the impact launched him even higher, away from the explosion. As he dodged, the young man continued to ascend through the air. In the crowd, Zhang Ma questioned how he could fly with just the strength of his legs, while Tenji praised him. In the air, Wulingen commented that he had finally managed to escape the attack. Suddenly, the swordswoman appeared, flying on her blade, and dared him to escape her next strike. Shortly after, she readied her sword again, gathering energy in the blade. She then unleashed a massive vertical slash of energy toward her opponent. The attack struck the arena floor with destructive force, kicking up dust and debris. As the strike ended, the warrior landed amidst the smoke, with fragments falling. But the pavilion master questioned if the fight wasn't too dangerous. With that, the cultivator prepared to face the immortal art coming her way. Suddenly, Wulingen appeared and blocked the energy sword with his bare hands. Nirang-chan was stunned by the scene, while Tushan Xiaoyu stated that his strength was. Even so, the challenger pushed forward, determined to force him to reveal his true trump cards. Soon she invoked a technique that created a vortex of swords in the sky above his head. Next, the young woman launched a shower of spiritual blades toward her rival. Lying on the ground, the young man simply opened his mouth and began to suck in all the energy from the attack. The swords then crashed against his body, which absorbed the full impact. The scene then revealed that Wulingen had stopped all the blades, to his opponent's complete astonishment. In the distance, the instructor watched intently, commenting on how familiar it all seemed. Next, the cultivator gathered the energy from the swords into his sphere and held it in his hands. After he tossed the sphere back to the challenger and told her she was no match for him. The sphere fell to the ground as the warrior glared at him furiously. With a determined expression, the swordswoman declared that she would never surrender to a demonic cultivator. At that moment, the story flashed back 10 years to the past, to Yuji and Peak, were a child's. Back then, a young Baidi, only 5 years old, celebrated as she managed to feel spiritual. Right after, her mother hugged little Baidi, praising her for guiding chi into her body at just 5 years old. Huawei declared she was certain her daughter would become the greatest of masters and make Yuji and Peak a better place. The girl then promised to work hard, as her mother praised her for being so obedient. Suddenly, a male voice interrupted, telling her not to raise the child so naively. At that moment, Bai Jianren, the girl's father, criticized her for being proud of just sensing chi. He claimed she couldn't lead the sect that way. Huawei immediately scolded him, reminding him of his own childhood failures, but he retorted that talent without a stone. Ignoring her husband, the mother called her daughter to celebrate her birthday with a special meal. As they walked together, Huawei explained that her father was right, because she was a woman she would need. With these words of encouragement, the little girl immediately sat down to meditate, vowing to train hard until she reached the chi. From a distance, her father watched in silence and said he would return to check on her. As soon as he turned away, he hid in a corner. Hidden, the man began to cry, wondering if he had been too harsh with his words. Unexpectedly, his wife appeared and startled him, saying she heard him because he was making so much noise. She then teased him for acting so severe when he hated to see their daughter suffer, but he replied that he needed to be a. Huawei questioned if his dignity meant crying hidden in a corner, leaving him speechless. Bai Jianren then reflected that the world of cultivation was dangerous. A little suffering now would be better than losing her life in the future. With that, he stated with conviction that his daughter was without a doubt the most exceptional genius of the. That night, her mother watched the little girl meditate, thinking she needed to bring her more clothes because of the wind. Meanwhile, Eugene Peak remains silent under the moonlight, alone in the garden. Little Bai Di continued to practice her cultivation. As she meditated, she thought she was very close to finally reaching the chi refinement stage. Determined, she focused even harder, resolved to become stronger so her parents would no longer fight. Suddenly, a shadow with a demonic aura appeared behind her without her noticing. Right after, her mother approached with a tray of snacks, telling her not to train so late. In that same instant, the shadow transformed into a large, demonic figure with. As Huawei screamed her daughter's name. A demon with a sword and shield appeared on a nearby roof. The girl's mother then identified the figure as a demonic cultivator, startled. Huawei dropped the tray of food on the ground. Despite the commotion, little Bai Di remained focused on her cultivation, repeating to herself that she was almost there. Just above, a violent collision of red and blue energy occurred. At the same time, the girl was nearing the chi refinement stage. With a final cry, the little girl finally managed to advance in her cultivation. Afterward, she turned and asked her mother how she had found out about her advancement so quickly. With no time to celebrate, Huawei hugged her and yelled for her to run from the. Then, the woman pushed her away and ordered her to find her father, taking the enemy's blow in her place. The first rose from the impact of the attack. Soon after, Bai Jianren appeared with the guards and asked what had happened. His eyes widened in shock. Before him, the demon held its sword embedded in his wife's chest, who was shielding their daughter with her own body. With a furious roar, the patriarch summoned a chain technique to bind the intruder. The energy chains wrapped around the enemy's body, immobilizing him. While his opponent was restrained, Jianren leaped into the air, preparing a. With that, he delivered a devastating slash that came down on the demon with all his might. After defeating the creature, the father rushed to support Huawei and tried to reassure her, saying. The daughter then warned that her mother was bleeding a lot, but he just replied that he already knew. With her last breath, the woman apologized. As she died, she lamented not taking good care of her daughter, leaving little Bai Di stained with blood. With one last desperate call, Huawei's hand fell lifelessly to the ground. The little girl then tried to wake her, begging her to open her eyes. Then, the father turned to his daughter and reminded her that it was her birthday. Bai Jianren handed her a sword and told her to protect herself, since her mother was no longer there. Back in the present, the cultivator declared she would never surrender to a demonic cultivator. While Wu Lingdan insisted he wasn't one of them, with tears in her eyes, Bai Di swore to use her sword to exterminate all demons. While the young man was startled, not understanding why. The young woman then stated she knew ordinary strikes wouldn't work on him, but that he shouldn't underestimate her. She then explained that although her father had forbidden her from using this technique before reaching the golden core stage, then, Bai Di raised her sword and recited the same incantation her father had used in the past. The dean and Huang Lu Hong watched the technique intently, as the pavilion master identified it. Yu Ji Enxing watched the scene with concern. However, as she performed the technique, the young woman coughed up blood. While Wu Lingdan worried about her condition and tried to offer help. Suddenly, the same energy chains her father had used in the past emerged and bound the young man's body. With her opponent immobilized, the cultivator prepared to unleash her. Right after, she launched the final sword strike, shouting the technique's name with all her might. The attack hit the arena floor with a devastating impact, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and debris. In the audience, Nurang Chan watched with concern, but Tushan Xiaozhue reassured her, saying he probably. Facing the dust, the girl told herself that this strike, created to kill demons, would be more than enough. However, from within the smoke, an unexpected voice called out. The competitor turned in surprise, not understanding what was happening. Soon Wu Lingen emerged from the dust completely unharmed and asked if she was finished with her attack, leaving her. But Baidi then asked what kind of demonic cultivator he was to have taken no damage. In response, however, Wu Lingen simply clarified that he wasn't a demonic cultivator. Still, completely ignoring him, she began to wonder if something was wrong with her. She then wondered if she failed because she hadn't yet reached the golden core stage. She concluded that with more strength, she could have easily defeated him. Meanwhile, from the audience, Dean Yu Tianxing watched the scene with an intrigued expression. Back in the arena, she released her aura, declaring she would break her limits to annihilate all demons. In that same instant, the Dean appeared behind her, looking terrifying. He then placed his hand on her shoulder and announced that the competition was over. At that moment, the audience began to speculate that the fight was stopped out of fear that she might actually. However, a masked man stated that it was already too late to stop anything. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed and fired an energy blast toward the arena. The attack shot across the battlefield and struck Baidi squarely in the back of the neck. Next to her, the Dean noticed a strange aura forming around her body. Yu Tianxing turned, his expression turning to alarm as he realized something. Immediately, a shadow wreathed in an aura rose from the ground, taking the form of a creature. The demon then let out a roar that echoed throughout the entire arena. Seeing this, the Dean's face hardened with irritation. As the creature grew, he wondered how a demonic cultivator had managed to. With that, he ordered the instructors to protect the students as he would deal with the threat himself. After the order, Baidi dropped to her knees, unable to understand what was going on. At that instant, the demonic creature turned and advanced toward one of the students. Seeing this, she was struck by a memory of a demon attacking her family. Soon after, the monster leaped to attack, while the Dean ran to intercept it. Even though she wanted to fight, the girl realized her body was completely paralyzed. To protect her, Yu Tianxing jumped in front and blocked the demon's blow. Meanwhile, from the audience, the masked man commented that the situation. He then ordered his followers to move. In that same instant, several shadowy creatures appeared throughout the arena. Examiner Huang Luhong then realized there was more than one demonic cultivator on site. In turn, instructor Mei Yanli offered to hold off the creatures, telling Xiao Chunhu to take the students. With a confident smile, he declared that the demons couldn't harm him because of his sacred body. As soon as the creatures attacked him, they were all repelled by an energy barrier. At that moment, students in the audience remarked that the instructors were truly reliable, despite. Finally, Tushan Xiaoyu watched the fight with a curious expression. After the attack, Mei Yanli remained standing without a single scratch to everyone's surprise. Meanwhile, Dean Yu Tianxing prepared to protect the competitor from the larger creature. The demon then attacked him with a powerful punch that was blocked at the last second. With his eyes glowing, he activated one of his special combat techniques. The Dean then unleashed a blast of energy from the sky, striking all the demons at once. The students watched the explosion, as one of them commented on the masters. After the attack, however, Yu Tianxing showed signs of great physical strain. At the same time, Baidi recovered and prepared to attack the creature approaching. The demon, however, advanced at high speed and attacked her before she could react. At the moment of impact, she turned with a look of surprise on her face. Yulingen appeared and blocked the attack with just one hand, saying you shouldn't bully girls. Surprised, she questioned why he was saving her after everything she had done. He then asked if the creature was her pet, which only angered her more. She then pointed out that even though she treated him like a demon, he still helped her. With a smile, Wu Lingyan replied that what's important is the kindness in one's heart. A lesson he learned from his father. He then said he considered her a good person, which is why he couldn't let her be defeated. Bai Di then warned him of two demons approaching from behind. Without turning around, he prepared to use one of his techniques. With a quick spin, he executed a strike that released a wave of energy. The impact of the technique completely disintegrated both creatures in an instant. From afar, the dean remarked that the boy was interesting for being able to defeat such a threat. Next, Yu Tianxing released his aura and prepared to eliminate the remaining demons. The master then fired a rain of energy projectiles that hit the entire arena. The larger demonic creature, however, began to rise again from the rubble. The roar froze them in place for a moment. At that instant, Wu Lingyan realized the creature was transforming and prepared to act. With a swift movement, he used a technique to intercept the sword strike. He managed to stop the blade with his bare hands as the monster roared. The girl, however, insisted that she also needed to fight and ready her weapon again. Right after, she broke free and charged forward alone to attack the demonic creature. With a precise strike, the competitor landed a direct hit on the monster's arm. Following that, Bai Di looked up, celebrating the success of her attack. As the monster remained standing, Wu Lingyan commented that she really was a good person. The creature's body then began to dissolve into a liquid that spread across the ground. Seeing the scene, the young woman stood still in the pool of liquid, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, Bai Di fell to her knees as she realized the monster was poisonous, putting Wu Lingyan on alert as he held the sword. Wu Lingyan noticed the poisonous mist was much stronger than before. Suddenly, the blade was pulled back. Right after, the creature charged forward to crush them, as Bai Di screamed for him to be careful. Even as he tried to move, the young man realized his body was completely paralyzed by the poison. With that, the girl leaped in front of him, using her own sword to block the blow. As she struggled to hold on, she said she couldn't last much longer. In a last-ditch effort, Wu Lingyan grabbed her and managed to escape the attack. The creature's impact then slammed into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Seeing him unharmed, the competitor asked why the poison didn't affect him, but he couldn't answer. He suggested he might have antibodies from a previous encounter. The young man then asked if she had ever faced a monster like that before, but he was cut off. Even though she wasn't affected by the poison, the girl admitted she wasn't sure if she could defeat that demon. Hearing that word, Wu Lingyan remembered his father and thought that demonic cultivators didn't look like that. Unexpectedly, the monster began to undergo a new transformation. The creature then let out a deafening roar that echoed throughout the entire arena. As it roared, Bai Di was thrown back by the force of the impact. Lying on the ground, the young man begged her to use her special move against the monster. The competitor, however, revealed that her hands were trembling and would no longer obey her. Suddenly, the mysterious hooded man appeared with a smile on his face. With an air of superiority, he declared that this was the perfect moment to save the day. Beside him, Master Dan advised him to be careful, but he boasted that the plot was. Next, Xiaohua turned to Bai Di and told her to just watch his show. After seeing the monster's roar, the young woman prepared to fight, even without. The newcomer then clasped his hands and began to focus his energy. Soon, he materialized a massive sword in his hands, preparing to attack. With his weapon ready, the hooded man leaped toward the monster to strike. The blow cut through the air and hit the creature's side with great impact. From a distance, Wu Lingyan warned him about the poison released from the monster's arm. With a smirk, he replied that he already knew that. Next, Xiaohuahua activated a technique that engulfed his body in flames. The technique transformed into a fire dragon that charged at the demonic creature. With that, the clash of their attacks generated an explosion that lit up the entire arena. Right after, he retreated into the air and prepared to deliver the final blow. The hooded man then raised his weapon and struck with a vertical slash. Unexpectedly, the monster managed to block the blade with its own arm, leaving him surprised. The creature then shattered the energy sword and threw him far away with the impact. Injured, he refused to retreat, claiming that as the chosen one, he would fight to the end. In response, the demon fired several dark projectiles in his direction. In the distance, ID watched the scene, completely frozen. Soon, the girl recognized the technique as being from Yuji and Peak and began to question the creature then let out a roar and charged forward at high speed. During the danger, Wu Lingyan jumped in front of her and shielded her with his own body getting pierced in the back. As he held her, he said that was to repay the favor from before. Suddenly, Dean Yutianxing appeared, wreathed in a fiery aura, yelling at the monster for hurting. He then manifested a gigantic energy form and declared that the creature was going to die. The smaller demonic creatures charged forward to attack the master's energy manifestation. Completely surrounded, Yutianxing complained about that group of demonic cultivators. From afar, the masked man commented that the real show couldn't be interrupted yet. As she held him, Bai Di asked how she could cure him of the poison, but he said he. Overhearing the conversation, Tianji remembered that the only way to neutralize the poison was with antibodies. With that, the girl raised her sword and said she would use her own blood to save him. Suddenly, a shadow lunged toward them at high speed. The monster then leaped into the air, ready to crush them both with a single blow. Realizing she wouldn't have time to cut her wrist, the competitor looked at Wu Lingyan. Without hesitation, she held his face and kissed him in front of the entire arena. The kiss continued as debris from the previous attack rained down around them, completely shocked. Xiaohuahua fell to his knees, unable to believe what he was seeing. As one of the students commented that he already suspected their relationship. Nirang Chan clutched her chest, while Tushan Xiaoyu furiously screamed for her to let him go. Last instant, the creature's attack hit the ground, but the two had already vanished. As soon as the kiss ended, Wu Lingyan activated one of his techniques, his hand glowing. Right after, he leaped into the air, carrying the girl and prepared a deadly punch against the monster. The attack struck the creature from below, creating a devastating impact. After the blow, a trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. Finally, he adjusted her in his arms and declared that his strength had been restored. As he held her, Bai Di watched him with a flushed face, unsure of what to think. But with a confident smile, the young man looked back at her, and she realized he was quite handsome. Soon after, Wu Lingyan asked why her face was so red, and the young woman replied it was because of her injuries. Seeing the scene, Dean Yutianxing seemed relieved that nothing serious had happened. Then, he turned to the demons and unleashed a massive fire attack to make them pay. Meanwhile, the masked man watched the shower of energy projectiles approaching. But with a swift move, he used an energy technique to shield himself from the attack. Back on the ground, Yu Tianxing pointed at him and identified him as the true culprit. Right after, the dean ordered him to die on the spot, and so, the hand of the energy manifestation lunged. Because of this, the blow struck the ground, causing a massive explosion. After the impact, a surprised expression appeared on Yu Tianqing's face. In the middle of the crater, he found a substitution dummy and realized the trick. Not understanding the situation, the dean wondered what the demon's true objective was. Soon after, the scene shifted to the front of the Academy's library pavilion. At that moment, dark energy portals began to open on the pavilion's walls. Inside, the masked man commented that the heroes were foolish to think he would attack from the front. With that, he summoned several spider-like creatures from an energy sphere in his hand. Next, the intruder stated that he just needed to find a certain item to complete his plan. The creatures then scattered through the shelves until one of them found what it was looking for. Soon, one of the arachnids brought a book and left it at his feet. The masked man then picked up the item and mocked the Academy's lack of security. With the book in hand, he looked up with a victorious expression. Suddenly, a voice declared that the library was a restricted area, with a hefty fine for trespassers. Seeing the janitor, the intruder taunted him about his fall from power, but he replied that it was none of his business. The guardian then demanded that he restore the place and pay the fine immediately. With a defiant smile, the masked man asked what would happen if he refused. At that moment, the janitor warned him not to say he wasn't warned and lunged forward to attack with his broom. In the next instant, however, the guardian's body was pierced by a counterattack. The impact threw him out of the building with tremendous force. Meanwhile, from the main arena, Yu Tianqing saw the explosion and realized something had. He then ordered the other instructors to protect the students as he was going to check on the situation. Right after, a figure leaped into the air at high speed, heading for the pavilion. Watching the scene, Tushan Xiaoyu commented that the world seemed to be on the brink of an. Back at the library, the janitor used his long beard to attack the masked man from a distance. However, the intruder mocked him for causing even more destruction than he had. Despite unharmed, the man reappeared and added a repair fee to the intruder's fine. Soon after, the masked man's arm detached and fled through an energy portal, taking the book with it. As his body regenerated, he complained that the old man was still as irrational as ever, even after so many years. In turn, the guardian simply watched him with a serious expression, not backing down. He then stated that one didn't need to be reasonable with demons, and charged forward to attack. The janitor struck with his broom but was blocked by a dark energy barrier. Despite the block, he kept up the pressure and managed to nullify his opponent's defense. Shortly after, a different gleam appeared in the guardian's eye as he prepared for his next move. With a quick spin, the masked man landed a direct hit. The janitor, however, managed to block it with the broom handle and nullify the attack. The force of the impact generated an energy wave that destroyed part of the pavilion. Facing the guardian, the intruder claimed that the strength he had amassed over the years was beyond his imagination. He then remembered when he was almost killed in the past, at his peak. In the memory, the red-bearded man appeared with a sword, facing him after his defeat. The masked man revealed that although he lost the fight, he managed to steal half of a secret manual. At the moment, the image of the former guardian appeared, holding the book with his sword in hand. Back in the present, he gloated about finally recovering the manual and questioned his opponent's silence. However, the guardian remained silent, his face hidden in shadow. Unexpectedly, he just added another fine for destroying the Academy's facilities. Annoyed, the intruder transformed his arm into a claw and leaped forward to settle the score. The attack missed because he managed to jump just in time. The arm was already coming back at him, leaving him astonished. With that, he stated that he would have to use his weapon once more and pulled a blade from within the broom. Immediately, the guardian countered with a slash of his sword. The clash between the two combatants generated an energy explosion that spread throughout the library. Confused, the masked man watched his dark energy arm begin to disintegrate. Before him, the janitor raised his flaming sword and declared that his remnant fire blade had been unsheathed. In the surprise, the masked man recognized the weapon as the Guardian's aura enveloped him. He then recalled how that very sword had been destroyed in the past and mocked him for keeping a broken weapon. In response, the red-bearded man asked if he wanted to find out if the blade was truly useless. Immediately, the caretaker challenged him to test it and charged forward at high. The first slash grazed the invader's face, who barely managed to dodge in time. Shortly after, the sword came down, striking him with a devastating vertical blow, the masked man's body. After seeing him fall to the ground, the Guardian stated that this should finally be over. Unexpectedly, a strange mass began to emerge from the wound in his body at that moment. The caretaker watched the scene with a surprised look on his face. Suddenly, the invader's body began to rise again, shrouded in a dark aura. The mass then transformed into a new creature with a monstrous appearance. With his body half regenerated, he commented that the old Guardian was Nadan. Faced with this transformation, the caretaker questioned him about what kind of demonic technique he had trained. As he rose, the masked man stated that his objective was accomplished and that he would. With his sword in hand, the Guardian declared that he would not let him escape again. The invader then threatened him, saying that the academy he protected would be destroyed if he followed. Even as the dark energy surrounded him, the caretaker remained motionless, not backing down. With a furious shout, he prepared to unleash his full power. In that instant, he slid his own arm across the sword's blade to activate it with his blood. With the weapon enveloped in an aura, he vowed not to let him escape. The masked man laughed and dared him to try, as a wave of energy surged forward to attack. The Guardian then leaped into the air and collided with the enemy's dark energy. Suddenly, Dean Yu Tianxing arrived on the scene and asked if his uncle was okay. Kneeling on the ground, the caretaker scolded him for his recklessness and his age. With his sword in hand, he stated that he would have killed the invader if not for the Dean then supported the wounded Guardian and asked who was responsible for the attack. The uncle then revealed that the invader was Sima Yui, an ancient and powerful demonic cultivator. Hearing the name, he then explained that to defeat him in the past, the Alliance of the Righteous had sent more than 30 specialists. A vision of the past then showed the Guardian and the other warriors uniting to face Sima Yui. With that, he revealed that the demon was only defeated after the sacrifice of more than 20 masters. The caretaker then said that Yu Tianxing should have already realized this was no ordinary demonic technique. He then clarified that Sima Yui's power consisted of controlling people's heart demons. The Dean confirmed his instincts were right and that the attackers were manifestations. Even as the Guardian insisted he needed to kill him, his nephew advised him not to waste his energy. Soon, he instructed his nephew to notify the Alliance of the Righteous about the imminent war Sima Yui was. With his wounded hand, the Guardian gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. He then declared that he no longer had the strength to protect the academy as his blade dissolved into light. When asked about the arena, the Dean reassured him, stating he had already contained all the other demons. Suddenly, Yu Tianxing realized something was wrong and looked up at the sky. The caretaker then saw one last heart demon escaping and shouted for it to come back and settle the score. Meanwhile, in the arena, the students were commenting on how lucky they were to have the instructors to protect them. In front of a creature's remains, the crowd shouted insults while Wu Linggan observed the hatred against. Beside him, Bai Di called his name. Her face flushed. Right after, she stated that even though she admitted he helped, she would still investigate him to find out. The young man watched her with a surprised expression. As the last heart demon lunged forward, he pushed her out of danger's way. With a quick spin, Wu Lingen took the impact of the attack in her place. While holding her, she asked why he had risked himself again, even when he didn't have to. He then looked down with a serious expression on his face. After they sat down, she remarked that he seemed to be fine, despite the tear-in. Bai Di then lightly punched his chest and